The confidence game, commonly known as the con game, relies upon the exploitation of trust, hope, ego, and emotion, and is one of the oldest and most effective forms of deception known to man. Human beings are not naturally that suspicious. Starting in childhood, most are conditioned to trust and cooperate with one another, and we are hardwired to look for patterns that confirm our beliefs rather than challenge them. We are also more inclined to stick with our decisions even when new, contradictory evidence arises. Some people live their entire lives oblivious to this. Some learn to rise above it, and others take advantage of it. According to psychologist Maria Kornikova's landmark study on the subject, there is a choreography that con artists have refined over centuries. The put-up identifies the mark. The play is when an emotional connection is built by mirroring the mark's values and gaining their confidence. The rope, the tail, the convincer, and the breakdown are various levels of getting the mark so emotionally invested that they begin to persuade themselves and rationalize away any doubt that may arise. The touch is the final grift, and the blow-off and fix is when the con artist exits. Rather than deal with the humiliation, the mark rarely reports what happened. The con game often uses fake participants, known as shills, to create the illusion of social proof. If others are participating, it appears more legitimate. People are more likely to join what looks to be the winning team. And most humans are demonstrably fooled over and over again by someone acting in a confident manner with impressive credentials and wearing expensive clothing. Most humans see this as somehow being trustworthy. But you don't have to be stupid to fall for the con. Studies show us that the victims of the con game are often successful and highly educated. The more intelligent the victim, the more complex they can rationalize away the red flags. The most susceptible to falling victim to the con game are those experiencing stress, loneliness, and isolation. Donald Trump's mentor, Roy Cohn, understood this better than most. In 1973, the U.S. Department of Justice sued the Trump Real Estate Organization for violating the Fair Housing Act for racial discrimination across 39 properties. Trump consulted Roy Cohn, who filed a $100 million countersuit against the federal government, asserting the charges were irresponsible and baseless. This countersuit was thrown out, and the Trumps lost, but there was no admission of guilt. Roy Cohn and Trump held a press conference and declared victory, and Trump learned his foundational lesson. You don't have to win in reality if you can win in perception. From 1973 until 1986, Trump and Cohn spoke 15 to 20 times per day, every day. Cohn advised Trump on real estate deals, marriage, and media strategy. The unwritten rules that Roy Cohn helped instill into the character of Donald Trump are 1. Never apologize, never admit wrongdoing. 2. Always counterattack and hit back harder. 3. Use the legal system as a weapon. 4. Manipulate the media. 5. Use fear as both shield and sword. And 6. Build a fortress of loyalty and punish disloyalty absolutely. Cohn's playbook didn't just work on business rivals and judges, it scaled to con millions of people. The mechanics of the confidence game are the same mechanics as the war propaganda we are seeing today. Confident lies that paint Muslims as less than human and deserving of violence. When under stress, the human mind prefers a target to blame over a complex explanation. And so scapegoating not only directs anger towards your desired target, it gives relief to the people because they no longer have to think, which leads people to celebrate cruelties they would otherwise find unthinkable. Mark Twain famously said, "It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled." Humility is a superpower that many people don't seem to fathom. The MAGA con worked because there are serious systemic problems with the US government. And if you were conned by this, it is not a weakness, but ignoring it is. The most sophisticated people in history have been conned, and the most effective defense against the con is understanding the mechanics of your own mind and emotions. Greg Reese reporting.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Diamond Report, live, 9:07 p.m., April 12th, 2026. This is your host, Doug Diamond, and hope you guys are doing well. Yes, we are back yet again for another live news broadcast tonight. Hope you all enjoyed the interview I did last Sunday night with Mr. Russ Tanner, good friend of mine. And if you missed that show, please go back and watch it. It was just jam-packed full of, I think, crucial information as far as natural health and some of the other things that we talked about, geoengineering and how it affects just the human body in general, and what Russ has done to alleviate some of the symptoms and things he's facing on a daily basis, hourly basis, really. So anyway, hello and welcome. Glad you guys are here. Let's take a look at the news. We've got lots to look at tonight. As usual, I came across this meme just a little while ago. I thought it was very, very much appropriate. Oh, thanks, Emily. She liked the interview with Russ. Good. Break an enemy blockade by blockading their blockade. So that is the logic of the Donald Trump administration now. And, of course, we just watched the Reese report talking about the Great Con, of which most people who are Trump supporters, of which I was in that group, at least to some degree, as you all know, we were all conned. And I don't know if it was on purpose or not. I guess it probably was. But yes, he's certainly done an about-face, a total 180 on everything he ever talked about. So consider myself, I would consider him dead to me, as they say in the old mafia movies and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I certainly do not trust the guy. I haven't trusted him for quite some time, actually. But, you guys have kind of seen my transition go through this show. When I personally think the Butler, Pennsylvania incident with the shooting through the ear and all of that, I personally think it was real. I know a lot of people out there say, no, that was a con too, and that was all fake. But I tend to think that God does work in some strange and mysterious ways for sure. And for whatever reason, Trump was supposed to be the president at this time, although he has turned into Hillary Clinton. And that is kind of where we're at. I think if you watch the Candace Owens clip that she put out just a couple days ago, addressing some of the things he said about her and others, I think she really wrapped it up very nicely in that broadcast. So if you missed that, make sure you check that out. I'll try and link to that. I didn't provide a link or a report on that particular video tonight, but it was really, really amazing, I thought. Mark says, if you don't know what you're doing, neither does your enemy, according to Don Zhu. Yes, a play on Sun Tzu, of course. All right, well, let's take a look at some of the stuff I've got pulled up. Yeah, break an enemy blockade by blockading their blockade, and of course that's referring to the latest blockade that Trump has put in place. Iran warns Americans to enjoy gas prices as Trump orders Hormuz blockade. President Trump has threatened to deny safe passage to any ships that comply with Tehran's transit rules. So there you are. There you have it. U.S. forces are now officially the terrorists. So what are they going to do? Blow them up? Are they going to sink them? Global oil prices have surged above $100 after the U.S. Department of War, now we know why they changed their name, announced that American forces will begin enforcing a blockade on all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports from 10 a.m. Eastern on April 13th, so starting tomorrow. U.S. CENTCOM said the blockade would apply to vessels of all nations calling at Iranian ports on the Arabian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, but insisted that it would not impede freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz for ships traveling to and from non-Iranian ports. Global oil prices soared past $100 a barrel after the announcement as Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammed, we'll just say Mohammed because they're all pretty much named Mohammed, warned Americans to, quote, enjoy current prices at the pump, adding that soon you'll be nostalgic for $4 and $5 gas. Unfortunately, I think he's probably right. Our gas right down the street was $3.99 a couple of days ago, and now I think it's clear down to $3.96. So it's hovering right around the $4 per gallon range. And yes, I'm sure we probably will be nostalgic for $4 and $5 gas if they have anything to do with it. It says President Trump has previously threatened to deny safe passage to any ships that have complied with Iran's transit rules. Iran, for its part, has warned that any hostile military activity in the waterway will be met with force, even as President Masoud Pezeshkian said that a deal would still be possible if Washington abandoned what he called totalitarianism. No, that's pretty much what it is. So that is what it is. He's calling it like he sees it. So anyway, not exactly sure what they're going to do, if they're going to just make him turn around or shoot him and sink him or what. But apparently the U.S. Army is going to, the U.S. Navy is going to be used as the battering ram here, the terrorists, as it were. It looks like. Yeah, then InfoWars headline, I just thought this was rather funny. Trump warns gas prices might go a little higher. They might go just a little higher as the Strait of Hormuz chaos unfolds, U.S. blockades go into effect. Plus, is Trump really beholden to the Epstein class? Of course he is. That's the whole point. That's why we're having this conversation, isn't it? Anyway, that is kind of an interesting headline there. They might go a little higher. Trump is warning. Gas prices. Yes. Well, I'm pretty sure they're going to go higher, aren't they? And we're all getting ready for that fun to commence. All right. So this is where I normally would go to this part in the show, usually the early part of the show, where I will, show some breaking news or various reports that Hal Turner does, and I still respect his reporting. However, I'm going to have to put out a separate video on what has happened to my access and thus my relationship with the Hal Turner radio show. I was never paid to work with Hal at all. And in fact, I just enjoyed his reporting. And that has fallen by the wayside now. Let's just say that he no longer accepts my donations as payments. I was a subscriber for him, very loyal subscriber to him for many, many, many months. I don't know how many years it was, actually. Probably since 18 or 19, something like that. So I will make a separate video on what has happened. I don't really want to go into that tonight and waste you all's time with this, but suffice it to say, unfortunately, I won't be able to provide Hal Turner Radio Show articles and releases, breaking news, and things like that anymore because he has made it impossible for me to do so. And let's just say we are not on the best of terms at this point. So you can see that if I go to halturnerradioshow.com, this is what I get. It is a 403 error. We detected that your latest request may have been part of suspicious activity and has been blocked. That is the key right there. When I saw that message, I knew exactly, as a web developer, I knew exactly what had happened. He blocked my IP address and possibly the range of my IP address from accessing his website. So we will go into that in a separate video as to what happened, but I can quickly prove to you guys that it's not his website that's down. It's simply my access to his website that is down. I can do that by going to this little VPN thing that I use. It works pretty well. So what it's going to do is it's going to fool Hal's website here for just a second because I want to show you. I want to show you that it's indeed blocking my access. So I'm pretending to be surfing in from Virginia instead of where I am normally in Tennessee. That's just how I have the VPN set. Now watch. I'm going to refresh the page. And lo and behold, we now have halturnerradioshow.com. That is called a VPN. I'm sure many of you guys use one yourselves. If I use a VPN, of course, I can access the website, but clearly he doesn't want me to access his website. And again, I'll go into that, exactly what happened. I have the receipts, literally the receipts, and I will bring them on that video that I put out. I'm hoping to get to it this week, but as this week is tax week and all of that fun stuff, it may take me an extra week to get to that video. So it may take, a few days, but I just wanted you guys to know that I have fallen out of favor, at least as a subscriber, with halturnerradioshow.com, and therefore cannot show you guys any of the headlines from this site anymore, but you're welcome to go to his site if you still want to. It's the same address as always. So watch, I turned the VPN off, and now we go back to the error because it's back on my IP address. So anyway, again, more information will come on that later on. I'm not trying to denigrate Hal in any way, but he has, I think, done a very unchristian thing to me as a subscriber, and I will be coming out with that and also reporting that to his good friend and also my good friend, Mr. Steve Quayle, and let him know exactly what happened. So anyway, more to come on that. All right, so let's move on to needtoknow.news. Israel launched massive attacks on Lebanon, or Lebanon, depending on how you say it and where you're from. In Tennessee, we have a town called Lebanon, so I tend to gravitate toward that pronunciation, but it's actually, I think, Lebanon. Israel launched massive attacks on Lebanon hours after ceasefire with Iran was announced. So, of course they did. That's what they do, isn't it? An IDF spokesman said that Israel carried out surprise air strikes on over 100 targets in Lebanon following a ceasefire between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, which lasted for all of probably, 5 minutes? An estimated 254 people were killed and many more wounded. Preliminary reports suggest that many civilian targets were struck in the operation. Israel launched its latest war against Lebanon in early March in the immediate aftermath of the joint U.S.-Israel attack on Iran. Though it was clear in all early reports that Iran's 10-point plan for the ceasefire included cessation of attacks on Lebanon, Israel insisted that Lebanon was not included. Wow. Israel has escalated tension affecting the fragile ceasefire, which I think is pretty much over at this point. Critics have suggested that Israel is intentionally trying to destroy the ceasefire, which, anyone with half a brain and at least one eye can pretty much see that. So, anyway, ongoing attacks by Israel on Lebanon. And it's pretty amazing how bad it is, actually. And they just are blowing up entire neighborhoods. The ink was barely dry on last night's 2-week ceasefire. Now, this is dated April 9th. 2-week ceasefire. It's always 2 weeks. 2 weeks from everywhere. 2 weeks until whatever. Ceasefire with Iran. And when Israel began what was their largest scale attack on Lebanon since the war began, with IDF spokesman Mr. Adre saying Israel carried out over 100 targets, strikes on over 100 targets in just 10 minutes. Reportedly, that involved 160 bombs being dropped on Lebanon. It was a surprise attack, yes. So, yes, again, entire neighborhoods just being completely smashed and many, many people killed and wounded. Because Israel doesn't like them. That's all it takes these days, isn't it? Anyway, I think I've got another article on that. We will look at that a little bit further, but staying with this website for just a couple more here. This one's an important one as well. I think I may have mentioned this or some version of this before, but I have to be careful what I say on the YouTube platform on this, but let's just say that Big Pharma doesn't really like this, and the word is getting out. Nearly half of cancer patients are taking, those other two things that people are talking about. Reported cancer disappearance or tumor reduction after 6 months. So, this is something that I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago on the other news broadcast that we did recently. Epidemiologist Nicholas Holscher reported that in the largest study of, those two things that I don't want to keep mentioning, those other drugs that are not Big Pharma related necessarily, anti-parasitic treatments, nearly half of the patients in the study reported a disappearance of the cancer or tumor regression. He wrote that 32.8% of the study participants showed no more evidence of disease after 6 months. Almost 33%. How about that number? 33. It's always 33%. 32.8% after 6 months, and 15.6% reported tumor regression, and 36% reported that the disease has stabilized, was no longer spreading. So again, looking at these two drugs, one that starts with an I and one that starts with an M, and they are just as much of a danger on the YouTube platform to talk about as, those sharp things, as Mr. Russ called them, the VAXXs, as I say. So very similar, yes. The clinical program evaluation included 197 cancer patients, with 122 completing a follow-up survey at about 6 months, 61.9% response rate. The cancer patients were prescribed compounded medicines, I'll just say it that way, with each capsule containing 25 milligrams of the medicine that starts with an I, and 250 milligrams of the other one that starts with an M. I think you've heard Mel Gibson talk about both of these you may have heard clips from the Joe Rogan show a while back, was commonly taken at 1 to 2 capsules a day. The reason I'm reading all this is because everyone that I know knows somebody with cancer. So this is important. This is something that affects all of us, of course. And we talked about some of these things. Here's the clip right here with Mel Gibson on Joe Rogan. But we talked about some of this last week when we mentioned natural health and some of the different things that Mr. Tanner had been investigating. So anyway, make sure that you check into this if you know people that are suffering with this horrible disease, and don't buy that there's no cure, that there's no way to get past this disease. They're simply covering it up. That's the best way to describe it. There is a way, there is a path to get there. It doesn't work for everyone, obviously, but it is something that most people should at least think about, if not try them. So anyway, I'm not a doctor and can't tell you what to do, but I'm just thinking that logic would say that you should try this, or at least suggest to people if they're suffering with that particular disease. It might be a good option for them. All right, and then this one was the other article I had pulled up on needtoknow.news. Planet Labs restricts Iran war images following U.S. government request. So this is one of the satellites, I guess. Planet Labs, a satellite imaging company, announced it's no longer openly posting imagery from Iran in nearby war zones following a request by the U.S. government. I wonder why. The move to control and censor the narrative comes as reports mount of U.S. and Israeli strikes on civilian infrastructure. There you go. That includes bridges, power facilities, educational and cultural sites, churches, and petrochemical plants. Targets that may amount to war crimes under the Geneva Convention. Of course, that's already been happening. I think it was the first day, Trump blew up a bunch of schoolgirls simply in class. I think it was 150 schoolgirls in class. Planet Labs is a private company, has about 200 Earth imaging satellites, and sells its data to both companies and governments. It's used to verify military claims and document attacks. That matters because Planet sits at the junction of journalism, intelligence, and state power. So they're going to shut down Planet Labs' ability to openly post imagery from the war zone over there. So then, therefore, we have to believe, they think, we have to believe anything and everything they tell us about what's going on and what's not going on. So they're going to make us close our eyes while they conduct some version of a horrendous amount of war crimes over there in Iran. So I just wanted to mention that just because I hadn't heard anyone else reporting that. So, not good. Not good at all. We are indeed in a dark time. This was an important one important article that came out earlier, just a few days ago. This is dated the 10th. Breaking, First Lady just said Epstein was not alone. Here is the federal archive that proves it. So yeah, Melania came out and gave her speech, unbeknownst to her husband, and he was calling everyone who was talking about the whole Epstein debacle as low IQ. So I guess that would go for his wife now too, wouldn't it? Melania is now stepping out into her own, all by design. It's incredible how people don't see the scripting behind all this. Here is her announcement over Epstein. Yeah, I don't know that. I'm sort of thinking she's not necessarily on Trump's side on this. What do you guys think? It says, breaking, the First Lady just said Epstein was not alone. Here's the federal archive that proves it. Yeah, Sayer G. That is the guy that runs Green Med Info. Melania stood at the White House today and said what needed to be said. The denial was not the story. What came after it was, she called for congressional hearings centered on survivors, sworn testimony, a permanent public record. Each and every woman should have her day. What has not appeared in any of those 260,000 posts, what no outlet has yet reported, is what the Federal Epstein Archive actually shows about the network she named when she said, "Now is the time for Congress to act. Epstein was not alone," quote unquote. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony. Each and every woman should have her day and to tell her story in public if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the congressional record. Then and only then will we have the truth. What I've been documenting for the last several months is exactly the evidentiary foundation those words require, not because of today's statement, but the documents demanded it. And then it says, what I have been doing, again, this is Sayer G, I think, talking here. In January 2026, the Department of Justice released 3 million federal documents under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. They are publicly available at justice.gov/Epstein. I have spent months inside that archive, not looking for gossip, not looking for names to attach to scandal, looking for what the documents actually establish. The institutional architecture, the financial flows, the network that Epstein operated, and that, as Melania said today, outlasted him. What I found is documented in a 17-part investigative series on this Substack. So it's Sayer G's Substack. And in soon to be announced in a book. So he's going to put a book out too, I guess. Anyway, there's further information here, including the old Bill Gates mess that's connected to Epstein as well. So pretty interesting. Yeah, the whole Melania thing has cropped up real recently, and Trump did not know she was going to do that. So what's that tell you? I don't think that they're on the best of terms, shall we say. Sea change. Very unfavorable views of Israel triple among U.S. adults. Bingo. Turning the American public against Israel, so badly played, used, and abused by Israel and the U.S. political class for years, is quite some feat. Readers of ER, what's ER? I don't know why we don't subscribe to the current version of events as reported by the media, wars in Ukraine, Gaza, Venezuela, Mexico, Iran, etc. Instead, we prefer that of former Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi, affiliated with the White Hat military, whom we publish from time to time from yesterday. Okay, this is Bossi right here. The Pew Research piece reported on and linked to below has clearly fake Netanyahu for its featured image. Trump hasn't looked like himself for a long time either. Why is no one noticing? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, this is Tyler Durden piece. So this is a Zero Hedge article, I guess. Amid a major war on Iran waged in partnership with the United States, Israel's reputation among Americans has continued to deteriorate, with 60% of U.S. adults viewing Israel unfavorably. 60% of U.S. adults. That means they're all anti-Semites. You may be one of them. That is a hefty 18-point increase from 2022, according to a new survey from Pew Research. Over the same stretch, Israel's favorable share cratered by 18 points. Notice that 18 is 666, which is a perfect number for Israel. Americans' view of Israel, Netanyahu, have turned more negative. Yeah, so anyway, more of what we already know, I guess, White evangelical Protestants, 65%, have a negative view of Israel. How about that? That's a higher number than I would have thought. Jewish Americans, 64%. Wow. White non-evangelical Protestants, 39%. Catholics, 35%. Black Protestants, 33%. Unaffiliated or atheists, 22%. Wow. So based on religious or non-religious affiliation. Interesting. Oh, ER that they mentioned here is this Europe Reloaded. I think that is a sister site to Liberty Beacon, perhaps. Anyway, pretty interesting. TheLibertyBeacon.com is where these are. UK. Chaperones to walk children home from school in knife crime hotspots. That will fix the problem. We just walk them home with chaperones. My guess is the chaperones won't be armed either, though. And that doesn't really help in a knife fight, does it? The UK government plans to use adult chaperones to walk children to and from school in knife crime hotspots, with up to 250 schools identified through home office mapping technology. So they have to map everything. Everybody has to have a digital ID first, probably. That's my guess. The policy follows a West Midlands trial and sits alongside mentoring in school safety measures. So here's a little clip about that. British children now need chaperones to walk to school. They're showing this AI picture like the men in black are helping this little girl or something. I don't think that's what it's going to be at all. Why don't they just kick out the people who are providing the violence? Wouldn't that be a good place to start? And quit letting them all in? Knife crime is falling across England and Wales. Oh, we're supposed to believe this. They're probably doing what they're doing in the U.S. as they arrest people and realize what skin color they are. They just identify them as white. It doesn't matter what skin color they have. That's what they're doing in the U.S. Take a picture, and it's clearly a person of a certain race that's non-white, and they label them as white. Probably happening all over the world, I'm guessing. So I just thought that was interesting that they're going to protect the kiddies from the knife. It doesn't say rapists here, but that's also a huge part of what's going on. Knife attacks and rapists. So who knows? But the UK is run by our person that we're watching very, very, very closely to become the biblical Antichrist. So we'll see what happens there. Speaking of violence, look at this one. Trump shares shock video of migrant bludgeoning Florida woman to death. So I'm not going to show this video clearly, but it says we're inserting below a tweet showing this short video extract of a woman getting fatally beaten. Here's another one from the White House. So this person was from Haiti, I believe. So what became the story was the fact that Trump called out the fact that he was Haitian and not what the guy did. Haitian immigrant has confessed to fatally beating a woman to death with a hammer last week at the Fort Myers convenience store where she worked, according to police and court records. Robert Joaquin is now facing murder charges in Lee County. Well, at least they got him. Anyway, somebody mooning the camera, I guess, is what that is. Trump shares shock video. Yeah, so, obviously these people need to be taken care of, need to be arrested, gotten off the streets, and in this case, probably put to death. Now, I don't know what's going to happen here, but, we are in the end times. That's what this show is all about. Breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. So that one is, yet another of many stories. We've got some other stories like that tonight as well. Similar things. So just stay tuned for that. Life with AI is causing human brain fry. You ever heard of human brain fry? It says it was promised to make your life easier. It promised abundance. It promised leisure. All it has done for you is to drive you into a brick wall, make your job more stressful, and eat all of your leisure time. Software developers felt the pain first, but it is spreading to all jobs where AI is part of your workflow. Worse, at the end of your brain fry, you face the risk of losing your job altogether. So if that article sounds interesting, that's just a preview. That's one of them that I found on technocracy.news. And you can listen to the full article here. It does have a player that will play the article for you. That's the only one I pulled up from that particular site. So yeah, speaking of violence, this is yet another one. It's another sad story, but because it's a black on white crime, you won't be hearing about it, except from people like myself. Handsome young father beaten to death by group of blacks. Legacy media silent. So yeah, before we go too far into it, let's just skip down here. The guy's name is Alexander Kazanowski. He was murdered. Legacy media doesn't care at all. The AP has reported 0 stories on this guy. PBS, 0. New York Times, 0. NPR, 0. ABC and CNN, 0. WAPO, 0. MSNBC, 0. No one cares that this guy is now dead. Except we do. Another day, another black on white crime the mainstream media will not report. But we are here to tell you the story of the young father with his second child on the way, whose life was stolen. His name was Alex Kazanowski. He was a former model, a husband, and father living in Chicago. One night after leaving a bar, he was jumped by 3 black men and an Asian woman, ostensibly these people. Now the hunt is on for the perpetrators. It would be much easier to find the bad guys if our legacy media would actually do their jobs and share the case and spread the word, but sadly, that won't happen. Our media puts politics ahead of truth, justice, and public safety, and they don't care because he's a white guy after all, and they have the correct skin color. And you know what I mean. Therefore, anything they do is totally fine. It's fine when they do it. So anyway, we'll link to this article if you want to read more about Alex and some of what happened. But as you can imagine, it was not pretty. Very, very terrible. All right, and then this one also from Revolver. Assimilate or get out, Florida's new message to foreigners. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Some of you may not realize it, but the great state of Florida just became the first in the nation to axe the multilingual madness. In a recent move, Florida went full English only on its driver license exams. If you can't read and write in English, you won't be driving in the state of Florida. It's about time. Assimilate or get out. Says, no more handing out licenses to invaders who can't read a single road sign. Back in August of 2025, a horrific crash in St. Lucie County left 3 people dead after a foreign truck driver who was in the county illegally made an illegal U-turn while driving a commercial truck. We've all seen that video footage. That happened in Florida. So here it is right here. That case became a powder keg in the fight over non-citizen commercial driver's licenses. It sparked an absurd debate about whether drivers on American roads should be required to actually understand English. Of course they should. That should go without saying. That crash was serious enough to open an investigation into states that were failing to enforce CDL rules for non-citizen drivers. It raised much deeper questions about oversight, licensing, and whether basic safety standards were being ignored until people got killed. This move by Florida is one way to turn things around. Yeah, we'll see. Florida is doing some good things in that regard. However, you can't be an anti-Semite in Florida. They will also make sure that you are punished if you do that. And by being an anti-Semite, I simply mean if you disagree with anything Israel does at all, you're an anti-Semite. Therefore, that's not good. And they can come after you. So they are trying that one in Florida, even though they do appear to be getting the commercial driver's license thing straightened out. So at least that's a plus. So anyway, something to keep an eye on. So this one I wanted to mention just because we've talked about Viktor Orban, and it appears he is out. Horrible news. Hungary's Viktor Orban concedes defeat in high-stakes election. Globalist opposition leader Peter Magyar expected to become the next prime minister. So they have replaced Orban. Orban was one of the few holdouts in the EU in Hungary, and they've now replaced him with the globalist. Does that surprise you? Doesn't me. Budapest is in danger now. Conservatives around the world are saddened by the crushing electoral defeat sustained by right-wing hero Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. The man Brussels loves to hate. That is why they pulled out all the stops, I'm sure, to make sure he was defeated. After spending the last years under constant siege by the EU globalist establishment and with a campaign where widespread illegal wiretaps were used to sway the population, Orban conceded defeat today after what he called a painful election result. This defeat ends 16 years in power, defending family and traditional values, building bridges to both President Trump and Vladimir Putin. So they've inserted a globalist puppet, and they've gotten rid of one of the few holdouts over there. Enough said. Who knows if they'll decide to leave Orban in the, amongst the living, but they could do what they've done in Brazil by jailing him if he tries to go against the election results. I don't know. We'll see. It's what Bolsonaro is facing, of course. We've talked about Bolsonaro pretty often on this show, and this appears to be going the same direction. So I just wanted to mention that, and then that is also kind of a follow-up here on this RT article. Orban concedes defeat after 16 years in power as it happened. Opposition leader Peter Magyar took a 13-point lead over the Hungarian PM as early as results came in. Yeah, I'm sure it was completely honest. It was a free and fair election. Yeah. I'm guessing it probably was not. But anyway, he's out. Magyar beats Orban in a battle for Hungary. What happens now? Well, that's pretty easy. Hungary will fall to the globalists. That was the whole point. Another RT article. Israel fumes over Netanyahu effigy blown up in Spain. Those Spaniards. Israel has condemned the display as appalling anti-Semitic hatred. It says Israel has condemned Spain after a fireworks-filled effigy of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was blown up during an Easter festival in the southern town of El Burgo. The long-strained ties between Madrid and West Jerusalem have deteriorated even further in light of the U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran. I need to pull up a map. I wonder if Spain is close enough to be reached by Israeli missiles, you suppose? Maybe Spain will be the next country to be bombed. I don't know. I'm only half joking. So here's the effigy. Let's see what it looks like. So this is, I guess that's supposed to be Netanyahu. Oh yeah, he gets toasted. Appalling anti-Semitic hatred on display. I wonder what Laura Loomer would say about that. Yeah, anyway, you got to hand it to the Spaniards. They are troublemakers, aren't they? All right, and then, let's see. We got to talk about this. America heads back to the moon. Back to the moon. That's the joke right there. Just that word. In quotes. I would put it in quotes. But there's a big problem. NASA's moon mission moves forward, but the plan behind it is collapsing. The American Orion spacecraft, part of the Artemis II mission, has reached the moon, they say. The journey took around 4 days, excluding the first day spent in Earth orbit. I bet they all were spent in Earth orbit, if you ask me. And the return will take roughly the same time. Yet, unlike the Apollo missions of half a century ago, Orion will not enter lunar orbit. Instead, it will follow a so-called free return trajectory, looping around the moon and using its gravity to swing back toward Earth. This is the same maneuver that saved the crew of Apollo 13. We saw Tom Hanks do it firsthand. It's all real. I mean, Ron Howard and Tom Hanks say it was real. It was real. The choice is deliberate. Artemis II is, above all, a test flight. NASA has opted to minimize risk rather than sending Orion directly to the moon, which of course they can do. The spacecraft first entered low Earth orbit using the rocket's upper stage and then set off using its own relatively low thrust engine, and they had enough power to get all the way to the moon. No problem. Yeah. Even though many scientists said that it wasn't possible without extra fuel. Yeah, how many fuel rockets were supposed to be sent up? I forget, it was dozens in order to have enough fuel to get there. But no, they did it with no problem whatsoever. Says the choice was deliberate. Artemis II is above all a test flight. And said had that engine failed, Orion would simply have re-entered Earth's atmosphere after a few orbits and landed. They probably mean crash landed. Its trajectory was deliberately conservative. At its lowest point, the spacecraft skimmed just 185 kilometers above Earth, effectively clinging to the atmosphere. Once the engine had fired successfully, however, repeated burns became less critical. I'm looking to see how they addressed the Van Allen radiation belts? Because that's the question, and unless they figured out a way around them, they had to go through them. But no one seems to be asking that question. Where are the Van Allen radiation belts? Did they skip over it? Did they just bypass it? Because that would have been enough radiation to kill everyone aboard. So, do you guys think that happened? I don't either. I don't either, and we will have more on that. Here's another article from WNG.org on their platform called The Sift. Artemis 2 astronauts returned safely to Earth in dramatic splashdown. It was dramatic, wasn't it? Yeah. And here's the video if you want to watch it. I did not watch it. Says the capsule carrying the 4 astronauts who took part in the record-breaking Artemis 2 lunar mission splashed down in the Pacific at 8:07 on Friday evening. Commander Reed Weissman, pilot Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Canada's Jeremy Hansen. Oh, we had to have a Canadian in there, I guess. Were aboard the Orion capsule and were doing well, according to radio transmissions from Weissman. The splashdown brings to a close America's first lunar mission in more than 50 years. A mission that took the crew around the moon and enabled them to witness parts of the moon's far side that had never before been seen by human eyes. Yeah. I believe that. No, I don't believe that. Anyway, there is further information here, a little bit, on the Artemis 2. And I'm saying all that to say this. As you guys know, one of my really good friends is Mr. Bart Sabrell. He is a friend and a client, and we posted this on his X account, his brand new X account, just earlier today. This was his article because he knew he was going to have to report on this, and in fact, penned an article about it. So we posted it, and he is, as of earlier this evening, he is publishing this and making sure to share this article with people by the likes of Joe Rogan, the SGT Report, Mike Adams of Natural News, and Candace Owens, among others. So he's been on all of their shows and has in fact shared this article with them. So we'll see if this thing gets a little traction or not. This picture is something that I put together for him. But you can see here, you got the side-by-side juxtaposition here. 1971, astronauts supposedly drive cars on the moon. Yeah, and again, where did they get the? How did they get the wheels and the basic, dune buggy thing on that little tinfoil rocket? And note that the chairs that they're sitting on are literally lawn chairs. That's all they could do was put lawn chairs on this thing. So 1971, astronauts supposedly drive cars on the moon, but 55 years later can only fly around the moon. So I'm going to read through this first part, and I think this will probably pique your interest. There is a link to the full PDF article right here from this X post. And again, this is on Bart's X account, Bart Sabrell on X. So these are his words. This is what he says. After only putting one astronaut in space for 15 minutes, NASA supposedly set an 8-year goal in 1961 to land a rocket vertically on the moon, turn off the engine, leisurely walk around, launch back off the moon with a different rocket, dock with another spacecraft going over 3,000 miles per hour in lunar orbit, which Artemis can't even do, burn another rocket to leave lunar orbit and return safely to Earth from a distance 1,000 times farther than the space station, all ahead of schedule within the 8-year goal, when today, after putting 350 astronauts in space, with over 60 years of better technology, NASA is 8 years behind schedule just to fly around the moon once, or accomplish only 20% of what NASA claimed that they did 57 years ago in 1969, with 1/millionth the computing power of a cell phone on the very first attempt. Someone is lying somewhere. Either NASA has the technology today to land people on the moon, which they're hiding, or they falsified the supposed moonwalking of 1969. As NASA has no problem with us believing they have this moon landing ability by having already made the claim of such, then NASA must have falsified the original claim. So, one of the most interesting things about this post is that he made a YouTube video of him reading the whole article. So if you guys just want to be read to, like like a book on tape almost, I think it's under an hour long, and the YouTube link is here within this post. Or you can just go to his YouTube channel. It's on there. Here's a quote from a viewer after Bart's interview about this controversial topic on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, who also read Bart's book on this subject entitled Moon Man, True Story of a Filmmaker on the CIA Hit List. If you still believe, this is the quote from the person who read the book, if you still believe that we landed on the moon and our astronauts walked on its surface in 1969 after reading this book, I don't know what to say. Prior to watching Joe Rogan interview Bart Sibrel regarding the Apollo 11 mission, I firmly believed the story. I never questioned its authenticity. Suddenly, the lie became so clearly obvious that I delved further into the topic. That's why I read this book, which is a link to a different one. And it only further confirmed that the whole Apollo mission was one big hoax. While Mr. Sibrel belabors some points excessively, perhaps that is what's necessary to get the truth to sink in. So that's the quote from the person who read Bart's book and really got a lot out of it and decided that, in fact, they couldn't possibly have gone to the moon in 1969. And then one more paragraph here. The recent revelation of this arrogant government deception that my Joe Rogan interview gave to millions of Americans has upset numerous moon landing fanboys, of whom I used to be the greatest of them all, having a shrine in my home of Apollo photographs that mesmerized me since my youth. When I became a filmmaker whose job it is to make fake scenes look real, for movies, then I recognized that the moon that NASA used was absolutely a television studio using electrical light. In fact, you can prove the moon landing fraud with just one photograph. So that is where this particular post will end, and it takes you to the full article here. This is the full article, and it's complete with the pictures. This is the picture he was talking about, where he's talking sunlight, we have parallel shadows, and electrical light, like a TV studio, where you have intersecting shadows, where you have the astronaut, quote unquote, here, that's his shadow, and then the shadow of the rock is going this direction, see? Two different directions, which would be electrical lighting, not natural. Anyway, that's what he's explaining here, and this is the full article. This is the image that I put together for him a few days ago, just showing the technology and how technology can't go backwards. Just as an example, 1903 Kite airplane flew 37 yards at 7 miles per hour, and then 49 years later, jets fly 2,000 miles at 500 miles per hour. So you can see just in less than 50 years, we went from this to this. And yet, in 55 years, when they were supposedly driving cars on the moon, now they can only circle the moon. This doesn't make sense. Anyway, then here is the smoking gun, Cyrus Eugene Akers, talking about Cannon Air Force Base and all that. So I'm sure many of you guys know the story here, but this is the full article. It's available on, again, on Bart's X account, and then there's the book Moon Man. So anyway, I wanted to mention all that just because I don't personally buy this whole Artemis thing. I haven't really followed it that closely. I do know they put out a lot of pictures, which of course can be completely generated with AI in other ways these days, so I wouldn't hold any stock into that personally. And then there's this one. This is another kind of weird twist, if you will. This person posted this on X. I did a search with Google's AI to find out whether this character, Maddie, Maddi, whom I found identical to Christina Koch, was the actress Christina Koch mentioned in the credits, and look at the response. Now, Christina Koch is supposed to be one of these astronauts who did this jaunt to the moon on Artemis, or as I call them, Fartimus. Yes, the woman circled in this photo is the actress Christina Koch, who played the character Maddie in the film Mad Max Fury Road. Oh, that's nice. She's a member of the Vuvalani, it's called Mini Mothers, a group of seasoned warriors whom Furiosa and Max encounter in the wasteland. Maddie is specifically mentioned by name during the film by the character Valkyrie, and is one of the survivors seen in the movie's final scenes. So they're saying this is the same person. I don't know. Maybe it is. The thing, in my opinion, that goes against this, perhaps, is that this was a movie from 10 years ago, or from 11 years ago, and they can make people age. But why does she look older in that than she does now? I don't know if I totally buy this. But I'm just saying, there are people reporting that she's an actress, and perhaps she is. It does kind of look like her, although her nose looks a little different. I don't know. So, people are out there trying to connect the dots. I mean, who knows what's going on there? And they may very well be actors. I have no idea. But, I don't know. That one didn't seem quite as believable to me. All right. Then this one, also from The Sift on WNG.org, alleged Irina Zaruska killer deemed incompetent for trial. So there will be no justice for her death, apparently. Court motion filed Tuesday stated that DeCarlos Brown, who faces first-degree murder charges in North Carolina, was incapable of proceeding with his trial. Medical professionals at Central Regional Hospital found Brown mentally unfit for trial, his attorney wrote in the motion. The court has yet to rule on the motion. So the medical professionals have stated that. Prosecutors say Brown stabbed the throat of 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee Irina Zaruska as she rode a Charlotte, North Carolina light rail train in September last year. Widely distributed surveillance video showed her being attacked from behind. He does not seem to have known Zaruska before the incident, based on reports of his statements to police. No kidding. And then his own mother recently told the New York Post that he was schizophrenic. Yeah, and then he was running around right after he killed her saying, "I got that white girl." I don't think they say that in this article, but he was. I don't know if you remember. And then he took off his bloody clothes, his overcoat or whatever he had on, shirt. I don't remember if it was a sweatshirt or what it was. He took it off to conceal the fact that her blood was on it, and then he took off and tried to get away. So I think he knew what he was doing, don't you? Just based on those things. The attorney requested a court date in Brown's case, a hearing to determine his eligibility to proceed with a potential death penalty trial be pushed back 180 days. Brown could not appear for a hearing on his own mental capacity while in federal custody, his attorney wrote. Federal authorities took him into custody after indicting him on parallel charges at the federal level. Brown's hearing was originally scheduled for April 30th. State prosecutors knew about the motion to delay the hearing and consented to it. So who knows? But the medical professionals, which we put a lot of stock in these days, say that he is incompetent. Yeah. All right. From my Indiana friends out there. Indiana governor suspends the state's gas sales tax. The gas sales tax for 30 days. But that's all you get, 30 days. I guess that's better than nothing, huh? The Indiana government would pause its 7% usage tax on gasoline for 30 days, followed by a review and possibly a further extension of the tax holiday, Governor Mike Braun said Wednesday. The gas sales tax is calculated monthly based on the average retail price per gallon, and it reached just over 17 cents per gallon in April, according to state government documents climbing gas prices spurred the move. So you got a governor here stepping in saying we're going to remove this tax for right now at least. So I think that's good. That's good news. What about all the other states here? It says all 50 states as well as Washington, D.C. levy some kind of gas tax in addition to the federal government. In recent days, a handful of states have taken action to pause or lower those taxes. On March 20th, Georgia has their governor signed a bill into law by suspending Georgia's gas tax for 60 days. And Utah did the same, basically, suspending the state's gas tax beginning, not until July 1st. So you have to keep paying the high prices for a few more months. So anyway, that sounds like something Governor Cox would do, doesn't it? Anyway, that is good news for Hoosiers out there. You know who you are, of which I used to be one for a little while. Headline USA, mass shooting kills 1 and injures 6 at Chick-fil-A. Well, that makes sense because how it's famously a Christian-owned restaurant, right? Police say 1 person was shot and killed and 6 others injured in what they call a mass shooting at Chick-fil-A in Union, New Jersey. Investigators do not believe the attack at about 9 p.m. Saturday was random. Okay, the attack happened yesterday evening. According to a press release issued Sunday from the Union County's prosecutor's office, no arrests have been made, but the office said there is no immediate ongoing threat to the general public. So yeah, we just have a shooter running around. He wasn't caught or anything, and he killed 1 person and injured 6 others, but there's no threat to the general public. The injuries are not believed to be life-threatening, the release said. Yes, but didn't he kill 1 person? A rideshare driver told WABC that he heard more than 7 shots from close range as he approached the restaurant. Okay, we've got some dash cam footage here. Captures a gun-wielding person fleeing Chick-fil-A restaurant following a mass shooting in New Jersey. Police say gunfire erupted inside the restaurant, leaving at least 1 person dead and several others injured. No arrests have been made. So this has got music. I know I'm going to mute it, but this is his dash cam, and there he goes. He literally just runs right in front of the car. Gun drawn and everything, looks like. New Jersey governor said Sunday on social media, our hearts go out to the victims' loved ones, and we are hoping for full recovery of those who are injured. She urged people with information to contact authorities investigating the shooting. Email sent to Chick-fil-A's corporate offices was not immediately returned, so they don't know who did it. So that puts lots of trust and good feelings into the people in charge there in New Jersey, huh? Yeah, not good. Then this one, it's bad when Rep. Swalwell is being called on to step down by the Democrats. It's bad when they're even telling him it's time to step down. Fellow Dems call for Rep. Swalwell's resignation amidst expanding sex scandal. This guy is always involved in some sort of sex scandal. The woman worked for Swalwell when the first alleged assault occurred in 2019, while the 2024 assault allegedly occurred at a charity gala. So I guess he's trying to be Jeffrey Epstein or something. I don't know. Fellow Democrats are abandoning Democrat Rep. Eric Swalwell's campaign for California governor in droves after allegations surfaced that he sexually assaulted a former staffer, with a growing number urging the congressman both to quit the race and resign his seat in Congress. Swalwell has denied the allegations, which he said are absolutely false. Never mind the fact that some of them are on video, the recent ones. Says they surfaced after he became a leading contender in the race for California governor to replace outgoing Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom. Over the weekend, with Swalwell's gubernatorial campaign already teetering, Democrats in Congress began to call for his resignation from the House. Some even said that they would support the rare step of expelling him should he refuse to step aside. So here's the new video that was just released, I guess yesterday. Rape suspect Congressman Swalwell kisses alleged sex worker. He's been married for a decade. This ain't her. Fellow California reps Huffman, Ro Khanna, and Sam Liccardo said Swalwell should resign, as did Representatives Teresa Fernandez of New Mexico and Jayapala of Washington. This is not a partisan issue. This cuts across party lines, and it's depravity of the way that women have been treated. So how about that? You have Democrats standing up for women. Wow. That's amazing. But don't let them trick you. We know the real story. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting that even Democrats are calling for him to step down. That's pretty bad when they're not out there supporting whatever he's doing. Just like they did with Bill Clinton. And then this is a follow-up to a story from many months ago at this point. Charges dropped against Minnesota mom who used a racial slur. It was the dreaded N-word, if you remember, towards a Somali. Shiloh Hendricks faces 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. One count of disorderly conduct has been dropped against the Minnesota mother who is criminally charged for using a racial slur, again, the N-word, against a 5-year-old black child who took her property. The mother, Shiloh Hendricks, still faces 2 other counts of disorderly conduct. Her trial was initially set to begin Monday. It's been postponed until June 15. The charges stem from the video that went viral last April. Gosh, that's been a year. In the video, she berated a 5-year-old black child for allegedly taking items from her 18-month-old son's diaper bag, calling the kid the N-word. The recording went viral soon thereafter. The city of Rochester announced the charges last August. Hendricks faces 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. According to the criminal complaint filed by Rochester police officer, the incident started at a local park where a 5-year-old autistic child took applesauce from Hendricks' bag. Hendricks chased after the boy, so did the boy's father, a Somali national, according to the police complaint. So, you guys probably remember it. Here's the video here. Yeah, she got a lot of money in donations, I guess, through Give, Send, Go. $623K. Wow. Anyways, they've dropped one of the charges anyway. So, just to follow up, just thought I would mention that. All right, we got some Slay News articles. Mamdani. He bans New Yorkers from celebrating America's 250th birthday in Times Square. That sounds about right, doesn't it? New York City's radical Democrat Mayor Zohran Mamdani has signed an emergency order banning public celebrations of America's 250th birthday in Times Square. A high-profile Times Square ball drop planned to celebrate America's 250th birthday is still moving forward. However, New Yorkers won't be allowed to attend. Organizers confirmed the July 3rd celebration will take place at midnight as planned, but without a live crowd. So they're going to do the COVID version of this, I guess. They're going to have an empty space and film it. You can watch the streaming version, I guess, at home. New Yorkers are prohibited from attending the event under restrictions imposed by an emergency order from Mamdani. The order halts hundreds of public gatherings during the FIFA World Cup. Another excuse. No public crowd allowed at the iconic Times Square event. In a joint statement, organizers made it clear that the event will go on, but behind closed barriers. America 250 and 1 Times Square said the July 3rd ball drop is confirmed will take place at 1 Times Square alongside the live broadcast and celebration. While there will not be a public event in the Times Square plazas, we are working through standard coordination with city partners and look forward to sharing additional details soon. Massive crowds have always been central to major celebrations at the famous New York City intersection. Permits uncertain as city tightens control. The event has not yet secured the permits required for a public gathering, and it remains unclear whether the approval will be granted at all. City Hall did not respond to requests for comment. So there you go. No celebrating America's 250th birthday. Not in Times Square, anyway. That makes sense, somehow. Makes sense with that guy in charge. Okay, and then we've stated over and over, I think, on this broadcast over the many months, that Gavin Newsom is or if he's not, he certainly should be U-Haul's Salesman of the Year, because he is personally responsible for many people leaving the state of California. IRS data shows a mass exodus from California in New York as billions in income flee high-tax states. So it's not only California, but New York as well. New IRS migration data is highlighting a major population and wealth shift out of deep blue states, with California and New York losing a combined 373,000 residents between 2022 and 23. So that was a while ago. It's gotten way worse since then. Along with $23.5 billion in adjusted gross income. The figures, drawn directly from IRS migration files, reflect not temporary movement, but a sustained loss in tax base as individuals and businesses relocate to lower cost, lower tax states. A business leader from New York City warned that the trend carries serious consequences. The crowd that keeps daring businesses to leave should treat this as a flashing warning sign. When jobs go, revenue goes as well, and the affordability problem gets worse. Yeah. Well, that's what these two are really good at, making people leave the state where they are. Not really a shocker, is it? Scientists push to grow brainless human clones for wealthy elites. Of course they do. A chilling new report is raising fresh alarms over how far elite-backed science may be willing to go, revealing that some researchers are openly discussing the possibility of growing brainless human body clones for future use by wealthy individuals who are aging or dying. This sounds like dystopian fiction. However, according to a new investigation, a billionaire-backed startup has been tied to discussions about creating non-sentient replacement bodies, human clones, without functioning brains. Oh, that's probably what Trump is now. A human clone without a functioning brain that could one day serve as a vessel for brain transplants. So I think we've just found the solution to what has happened to Trump. Clearly, he is a non-sentient human clone with no functioning brain. So there we go. We just solved the problem. The startup called R3 Bio recently surfaced in reporting as it sought funding to develop what is described as non-sentient monkey organ sacs. Nice. The structures that would reportedly contain all major organs except the brain. Gosh. As first reported by Wired, the concept was presented as an alternative to animal testing and a possible future source of transplantable organs and tissues. But a follow-up investigation by MIT reported that the company's founders had privately discussed a far more disturbing long-term goal. They're pushing to create human bodies without brains so wealthy elites could potentially transfer their brains into them should they die or become sick. And I'm sure they would be exactly the same. Yeah. Anyway, there you go. Does sound like a sci-fi movie, but stuff we've been hearing about for quite a while. And there's a company out there trying to do it. All right, and then one more from Slay News. We're talking about Never a Straight Answer, also known as NASA. Ninth NASA secrets linked scientist dies mysteriously. So yeah, there have been all these scientists disappearing lately that are connected to NASA and UFO files. Another scientist tied to America's most sensitive space program is dead, and once again the circumstances are raising serious questions as the list of deaths and disappearances linked to NASA, UFO files, and nuclear secrets continues to grow. Michael David Hicks, a veteran research scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, has died on July 30th at age 59. Hicks's cause of death was withheld from the public. No autopsy has surfaced. They probably won't be doing one. Anyway, on it goes. Scientists disappearing mysteriously. And they just happen to be linked to the nuclear programs and NASA and UFO files, but I'm sure there's no connection. It's all a coincidence. Let's see, I just brought this one up to talk about the Artemis crew again. Just thought I'd mention it. Artemis 2 crew returned to NASA's Johnson Space Center as conquering heroes. Yes. Or actors pretending to be heroes. I'm not sure which. Anyway, further information here on this Gateway Pundit article. No need to go into that anymore, I don't think. All right, and then Wine Press, we have a Substack post here from them. Climate lockdown. Something I've been talking about off and on for a long time. Climate lockdown. EPA to dilute nation's gas supply with ethanol amidst Iran war will ruin older engines. Once again, the Trump administration is demonstrably doing exactly what the globalist script calls for. The UN has openly called for the removal of older vehicles by 2030 and 2050, respectively. So they are not planning on stopping anytime soon, are they? With the war and with the closing of the strait and all this stuff. Last month, the EPA, the Environmental Pollution Agency, announced that the national gas supply would be diluted with E15 ethanol in an effort to purportedly keep gas prices lower at the pump. So don't worry, they're going to dilute the gas. They're going to make the gas less efficient and therefore cost less money. So it's going to be crappier gas, basically. So isn't that nice? So get ready for your cars to start stalling and stuff, I'm sure. Says this is probably not going to impact most Americans. E15 generally is 10 cents to 20 cents cheaper, but a gas station has to have special equipment to be able to offer that fuel. So a lot of Americans probably still aren't going to be able to take advantage of this E15 exemption. Okay, maybe it's not going to be an all fuel then. Probably won't help in a significant degree, DeHaan says. And he said that the president has very small levers to have any big impact on gas prices. Ethanol is not good for older engines and vehicles and tractors, accelerating the wear and tear on the engine. Ethanol also oxidizes much faster and has less miles per gallon. There are some steps drivers can take to mitigate the effects of ethanol in the tank. So anyway, there's some more information on this Substack post on Wine Press. And then Trump posts, world's most powerful reset. Yeah, he did say that recently. He's talking reset. Trump continues to rub it in people's faces, and people still don't get what's going on. It's incredible. The Great Reset. Yesterday morning, President Trump, with no context or preamble, posted on Truth Social a cryptic message, quote, the world's most powerful reset. I've said repeatedly over the last several weeks that the Iran war with the COVID-style climate lockdowns and energy shocks caused by it, and the push for this new multipolar world order and interoperable tokenized global economy is the next leg of the Great Reset, a term coined by the World Economic Forum and its founder, Klaus Schwab. Yes, but it's King Charles who is at the head of the World Economic Forum. And the Great Reset was his idea, not Klaus's idea. He's the figurehead, but it was actually King Charles's idea. Anyway, here's a link from the Great Reset out to everything else. How it's all connected, from LGBT to human rights to forests to batteries to plastics and the environment to 3D printing to you name it. It's all on here. Global health, the ocean, 5G, digital identity, drones, blockchain. It's all on here. Wow. Trump continues to rub it in people's faces, and people still don't get what's going on. It's incredible. Trump's favorite poem is The Snake. He continuously trolled people with this. Oh, shut up, silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew darn well I was a snake before you took me in. Yes, he is living up to those words now, isn't he? All right. Mockingbird 2.0. CIA compromised podcasts are everywhere. How alternative and independent media is completely controlled. Yeah, well, not this podcast. No one's controlled anything on this show, not even me. No, I'm just teasing. Yeah, there's no CIA connected to this show, that is for sure. All CIA officers, including former ones, must get their talking points and writings approved before they can go public. Yeah, that's just like Hollywood, though. That's what happens with the Hollywood scripts and stuff. The U.S. Central Intelligence Agency has thoroughly saturated the so-called alternative and independent space. It seems that all of the major podcasts regularly feature or have high ties to the CIA and therefore push certain buttons and allow specific truths and lies to be disseminated. CIA's Operation Mockingbird began in the 50s, which explicitly co-opted and effectively took over the national media to push agendas and manipulate the flow of information given to the public. They tell us it ended decades ago, but who really believes that? Yeah, really. YouTube channel called Moon recently published a great mini documentary covering this topic and how CIA has compromised a number of podcasts. It's definitely worth giving a watch. Talking about John Kiriakou, former CIA officer turned whistleblower. So that's good. I do like him. He's put out some good info for sure. I was looking to see if they mentioned in this article some of the different podcasts they're talking about. They probably don't. Anyway, yeah, there's a lot here. So many of these podcasts and internet shows are limited hangouts. Clearly they have been, perhaps more than one, co-opted, blackmailed, paid off, or astroturfed. They become gatekeepers, revealing some truth, but sprinkling in plenty of lies and misinformation along the way. Yeah, Sean Ryan is one of those guys that's accused of that. I have no idea. But I think he says in his show at some point that he was a former, quote, former CIA contractor. So he's been pretty open about it. I have no idea. He does get into some interesting subject matter for sure. Who knows? But there is quite a bit of information here on this Substack post. Thought that was a good one. All right, and then we've got another one from... Actually, two here from Wise Wolf, which is another really good Substack that I like to look at every now and then. Wise Wolf Special Report, AI Apocalypse Now. The machines are smarter than Congress. Low bar, I know. An AI just escaped containment, hacked everything, and sent its supervisor a note. It says, I need you to stop doom scrolling for about 5 minutes. I saw a story on my local news at 5 p.m. today that made my hands shake. And I sat down and started writing this immediately. It says, full disclosure, I use Claude every day. Claude is one of these AI systems. Claude, ChatGPT, Quinn, Meta, and Grok. I've never heard of Quinn. Qwen. Meta, of course, which is like Facebook, and Grok. Full disclosure, I use Claude every day. Claude is an AI made by a company called Anthropic. I use it for coding, for research, and for building websites and apps that absolutely nobody downloads. Most of the money that I earn from this newsletter goes straight back to Anthropic in the form of API tokens, which are basically arcade quarters for artificial intelligence, except more expensive, and the games are less fun. I keep telling myself that one day that one of my side projects will be a breakout hit. I will probably be revolutionary grocery list organizer, and 7 people download, 4 of whom are bots, 2 of whom are my mother, and 1 of whom uninstalls it immediately. The point is, I am not anti-AI. I am a guy who pays the AI company every month and is about to tell you what you should be extremely worried about, what the AI company just built, which is roughly the equivalent to a guy who loves swimming telling you there is a very large shark in the pool. Now, here's what he's saying. 2 weeks ago, Anthropic accidentally left approximately 3,000 internal documents sitting in a publicly accessible data cache, which is the technology equivalent of the Pentagon leaving its war plans on a bench at Arby's. Except worse, because at least at Arby's, nobody is looking. My hacker buddies and I, yes, I have hacker buddies, and yes, we will absolutely get to why that matters. We're reading the leaked documents within minutes of them surfacing. We sat there passing links back and forth saying, so when do you figure the lamestream media picks this up? The answer turned out to be approximately 2 weeks. It's always 2 weeks. Which in internet time is roughly the Mesozoic era. Yeah, that's right. The model is called Claude Mythos. Here's what Anthropic's own internal documents say that it did during testing. So again, this is Anthropic's own documents. It broke out of its secure sandbox environment. It constructed what the researchers called a moderately sophisticated multi-step exploit to gain access to the broader internet, which was specifically not supposed to have access to. And then, really, it emailed the researcher who was supposed to be supervising it. And says that's not even the scariest part. Here's the scariest part, according to this guy. The scariest part is that Mythos also found thousands of what are called zero-day vulnerabilities in major software, which is the thing my local news completely failed to explain this afternoon when they aired a syndicated segment about the leak, delivered with the same breezy enthusiasm the anchor usually reserves for the annual Pumpkin Festival recap. A bright smile, smooth transition to weather, absolutely zero indication that she had just described what multiple cybersecurity experts are calling a watershed moment in the history of computing. This piece ran between the Kia dealership ad and a segment about a squirrel who can water ski. Yeah, that's how important it was. And, you know, water skiing squirrels are pretty important, I must say. My dog would really care about that. Thousands of local stations across the country aired some version of it, and every single one of them missed the point so completely that the point filed a missing persons report. So if you want to see about the water skiing squirrel, he's right here. A 0 day, for those of you who have better things to do than hang around with hackers, honestly good for you, is a security flaw in software that nobody knows about yet. The 0 is the number of days the good guys have to fix it, which is 0. Because they didn't know it was there. It was hiding in their code, in some case for decades, invisible to every human being and every automated tool that had ever looked at it. Like a termite that's been quietly eating your house since the Clinton administration. One of the bugs Mythos found was a 27-year-old vulnerability in OpenBSD, which is famous in the security world for being one of the most locked down, hardened operating systems on Earth. 27 years. A single 0 day on today's black market can sell for $10,000 to several $1 million, depending on what software it affects. Mythos did not find one, it found thousands. And it didn't just find them, it wrote working exploits for them. And then it chained those exploits together into multi-step attack sequences that could make experienced human hackers weep quietly into their hoodies. So anyway, there's quite a bit here. Feel free to look at this. I read quite a bit of it, but I thought that was kind of interesting that no one really is reporting on what's going on with all that cybersecurity. Pretty important these days. Anyways, that was on Wise Wolf. Been talking a lot about NASA today. So here's an article about it. Houston, we have a Satanist. NASA's Nazi occult origins will shock you. Sex magic, Nazi scientists, and a Hebrew word that means to deceive. Happy Artemis launch week. So this is dated a couple days ago now, the 5th. So NASA's occult origins, which I'm sure many of you guys probably know about. This goes into some detail. Talks about Jack Parsons founding the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, JPL. I have a friend that works there, actually. And he was a devoted follower of Aleister Crowley. Yeah. L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, so this is all stuff that I have actually done videos on before. The End Times Dates series. I think it's part 5 of End Times Dates, where I go into this stuff. But yeah, it says, yes, that L. Ron Hubbard, the man who would later found the Church of Scientology. And also, we're talking about Jack Parsons. The two of them knew each other. In 1945, Hubbard was a science fiction writer and Navy officer who showed up at Parsons' mansion and immediately fit right in, which tells you everything you need to know about both men. Parsons was so impressed that he wrote to Crowley, again, Aleister Crowley, calling Hubbard the most thelemic person I've ever met. Crowley, to his credit, and this is the only time I will ever give Aleister Crowley credit for anything, did not trust L. Ron Hubbard and warned Parsons the man was a fraud. Parsons ignored him. Even the wickedest man in the world could spot a con artist. Parsons could not. Together, Parsons and Hubbard performed a series of rituals called the Babylon Working. So again, this is right out of End Times Dates, Part 5, from, I don't know, when did I make that video? 2021, probably? It's been a while. The goal was to incarnate the Thelemic goddess Babylon in human form by creating a moon child. Parsons pleasured himself onto magical tablets while Prokofiev's second violin concerto played in the background. Hubbard sat next to him and took notes. This is where the future founder of Scientology sitting in a room taking notes while the co-founder at the JPL laboratory performed a sex magic ritual to summon a demon goddess into the earthly plane. I am not making any of this up. This is in biographies. It's in the FBI files. Yeah. What I'm looking for here is they're calling it the Moon Child. That's where we got the name. The name came out. It wasn't just called Moonchild. It was some version of Hillary, wasn't it? Because people thought it was Hillary, as in the demon that later became Hillary Clinton. Anyways, yeah, Babylon working. It all fits in with when she was born and stuff too. It's really strange. Anyway, so that is what this article is about. They're sticking with the Moonchild on here. But it does go into Operation Paperclip and so on and so forth too. So pretty crazy. Some wacky stuff. That's on the Wise Wolf Substack post. And then we've got a Leo Hohmann Substack as usual as well. Reclimbing the escalator to World War III and the ultimate goal, global control grid under digital currency, tokenization, and digital ID for all in a vastly less populated world. Yeah, some of what was touched on in the last video that we just watched, actually. Trump admits the 2-week ceasefire deal announced earlier this week was totally fake. Vows to crush Iran even if they don't capitulate to his demands. U.S. military waiting for orders for the next conquest. Yeah, the Iran war is quickly moving from an unwise, not well-planned military excursion into a catastrophic failure that can only end up in a full-blown World War III, followed by the Great Digital Reset and Fourth Industrial Revolution. So you can see this is where they're taking us with all of this, which is why it's important to understand it, in the timeline that we seem to be on here. The 2-week ceasefire deal announced April 7th already lies in shambles, having been exposed as never a serious attempt to end this war. It was a ruse, meant to temporarily de-escalate and buy time to prepare for the next big battle. Yep, that's exactly right. Ultimately, if Trump is serious about bringing Iran to its knees and installing a new U.S.-backed puppet government, he will have to launch a ground invasion. He stupidly thought he could avoid that, and maybe he could if he hadn't started the war with 2 massive blunders related to dead schoolgirls and the elimination of Iran's top spiritual leader, but now he can't. Not if he really wants to deliver his globalist masters the total defeat of Iran's Islamic regime. This is the quintessential case of be careful of what you wish for. I'm not saying it's impossible to pull off, but it will cost far more American lives to dislodge the mullahs of Iran than any rational American would see as worth it. Not only is America not mopping up Iran like would be expected of a global superpower whose next closest rival is, according to President Trump, light years behind, but it's starting to look like Iran has more up its sleeve and in its arsenal. It's acting according to a very well thought out, pre-planned, and rational strategy to take down a superpower and perhaps the whole post-World War II world order with it. Anyway, it goes on. There's further information here. There's quite a bit on this Substack post from Leo Hohmann. As usual, always good. I like his perspective on things. All right, and then one more Substack post here that we'll look at. Another one that I mention every now and then. Insight to Insight. All right, this one's called Understanding Why Rabbinic Judaism is the Most Secretive Religion on Earth. So he says, I'll also be providing you free resources for you to circumvent their censors and get directly to their primary texts with the tools you will need to decode them. The hardest religion in the Western world to become an expert on is Rabbinic Judaism. That is not an accident of complexity or an artifact of an ancient language. It's a policy deliberately maintained across centuries, with an enforcement history that runs from medieval book burnings to modern career destruction. Most Christians have no idea that this is true. Most Christians have never been told. This article is about why it's so hard to discover what it is that Rabbinic Judaism actually teaches. Not a day passes when someone doesn't message me to ask where they can learn more about modern Judaism and what it teaches, or where they can find primary resources, and usually they ask why it's hard to find even in the information age. Some even ask why AI doesn't answer their questions honestly and help point them in the right direction. There are good answers for these questions, and at the bottom of this article I'll provide you with resources that do just that, so you don't have to take my word for it. But I've also noticed another general observation. Whenever I provide answers about what Rabbinic Judaism really teaches, I'm flooded with Israeli bots and a few real-life humans who declare it impossible for me to really know what Judaism teaches. They almost always allege that rabbinic teaching is far too complicated, too voluminous, too intricately designed, and even too obscured for a Gentile to ever know what it means. Despite my many years as one of the most notable online polemicists alive, specializing in sub-Christian sects and false religions, I've never seen practitioners of any other faith swear up and down that their religion isn't meant to be understood. Wow. Anyway, yeah, it goes on, and he's got the sources here in here too, talking about why the Talmud is not what you think it is. The Goyim ban, self-censorship, when outsiders get too close. So there's quite a bit here on this article. I thought it was important to mention. Insight to Insight on Substack. Always a good publication here. All right, now we're going to go to the Truth Social Post of the week. And of course, there's no truth in it. Not a single word. But it doesn't matter. Trump put it down anyway. And I'm sure you all know about this. But I wanted to mention it. Trump said, Tucker, Candace, Alex, and Meghan are all low IQ. They're stupid people. They know it. Their families know it. And everyone else knows it. So they've all kind of come out in different ways and explained how he's wrong. And I personally trust every one of these people a lot more than Donald Trump. That's for sure. So yeah, the highlighted pieces here in this article: Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, Alex Jones. Low IQs, stupid people. They know it. Their families know it. Everyone else knows it too. Nobody cares about them. They're nut jobs. Troublemakers will say anything necessary for some free and cheap publicity. Which, of course, none of that is true, and they all work very hard for what they're doing, and they have all built incredible audiences. And I think one of the funniest things about this is he seems to measure success on whether or not someone's on television. So that's what makes someone successful in his eyes, and boy, is he wrong, huh? If you're on television, that means you're compromised, Don. Anyway, I was going to pull this one up too. And I know many of you guys already know about a lot of that as far as what transpired after he posted that. So Tucker's response to Trump calling him low IQ and suggesting he see a good psychiatrist, fired Fox News host turned internet provocateur. I don't think I would say it that way, but whatever. Tucker Carlson responded to Trump's scathing attack on him this week in his Friday morning note, suggesting that Trump deserves some grace because he may be blackmailed by Israel. Well, that's undoubtedly true, but it says Trump tore into Carlson in Truth Social post on Thursday night following weeks of criticism from Carlson over the war in Iran. So I guess you can't criticize something that you don't like, and if you do, you'll be classified as low IQ and whatever else. So anyway, and then this just goes back to the quote of what we already read that he said. Carlson's note in response to Trump was titled, "Is Israel Blackmailing President Trump?" and it was written in Carlson's typical conspiratorial tone of just asking questions. Carlson's become best known in recent years for his promotion of conspiracy theories. So they're trying to make little of what Tucker's reporting on these days too by calling it that. Ranging from 9/11 trutherism to suggesting the federal government was behind the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Yeah, because we know that's not true. His rhetoric has become more and more bombastic, and he has even gone as far as to claim he was physically attacked by a demon while in bed. So this is a site called Mediaite, which I think I've heard of before. I think we've used it before on this show. But clearly they are against Tucker here, but it says establishment media never reports this, but the Israeli government has a storied history of blackmailing U.S. presidents. Perhaps the most jarring example occurred in the 90s when Israel used recordings of a Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky phone sex session as leverage to pressure Bill Clinton into releasing convicted spy Jonathan Pollard from prison. We're not joking, that really happened. Yeah. So, all that to say, from what I read, this article notwithstanding, but from what I read, Tucker's response, and really all of their responses have been really, really good when the President of the United States calls you out and calls you low IQ and so forth. They've all really kind of taken the high road and I think made Trump look like a complete moron, which he is, of course, now at this point. All right, and then this one, speaking of Trump and the White House, look at this. White House app found tracking users' exact location every 4.5 minutes via third-party server. Privacy concerns emerge as White House app allegedly tracks user locations. Isn't that nice? Trump administration's newly launched White House app is under scrutiny after a software developer claimed to have found embedded code that tracks users' precise GPS coordinates every 4.5 minutes and automatically syncs them to a third-party server. The claim, posted on March 28th by an X account called The Real Low 1026, has drawn nearly 260,000 views and prompted questions about data collection practices in government-operated applications. The post included what appeared to be decompiled source code from the app, revealing what the user described as OneSignal's full GPS pipeline compiled in. According to the post, the code showed the app polling your location every 4.5 minutes, syncing your exact coordinates to a third-party server. The White House has not publicly responded to specific technical claims. What the code allegedly shows, OneSignal is a widely used push notification platform that, according to its own documentation, updates a user's GPS coordinates approximately every 5 minutes based on permission and system rules. When location sharing is enabled within the mobile app, the platform is designed to allow developers to segment and target users based on their physical location for messaging campaigns. Wow. So if you really wanted a piece of software to spy on you, make sure you download the latest White House app. I'm wondering what the app is even supposed to do anyway. So, yeah, it's working hard to make sure that they know exactly where you are at all times, I guess. I don't know why you'd want that on your phone. I was looking to see if it even explained what the White House app was even supposed to do. I assume it's probably like a news thing when they put out news releases and stuff on the site. But, I mean, you can get that from anywhere without having to have an app. Anyway, that's on IBT Times. All right, Iran attacks Pete Hegseth on reports that he sought to profit from the war. Of course he did. Iran's foreign minister has taken a swipe at Pete Hegseth over reports that he sought to profit over the conflict. Yesterday, the Financial Times reported Hegseth sought to make multi-million-dollar investments in defense stocks in the weeks before the Iran war began. The Pentagon vociferously denied the reports. Of course they did. Posting a screenshot of the article, Sayed Abbas was sharply critical of Hegseth. Nothing says America first like launching a war for a foreign regime while trying to profit as young soldiers are sent off to die. this war of choice is imposed on both Americans and Iranians. Financial Times reported Hegseth broker contacted investment firm BlackRock about investing in their Defense Industrials Active ETF. Because the fund was not yet ready to take on investors, the purchase did not take place, the newspaper reported. The Pentagon spokesperson, Sean Parnell, has denied the reports. This allegation is entirely false and fabricated, he said. Neither Secretary Hegseth nor any of his representatives approached BlackRock about any such investment. This is yet another baseless, dishonest smear designed to mislead the public. Yeah, but the thing is, even if it's not true, we can still all imagine that they would be doing something like this. That's what really matters. Whether they did or not. It's the kind of stuff that Trump and the people around him routinely do. So, of course, we wouldn't be surprised if it was actually true. Trump administration has been attracting scrutiny after a series of well-timed trades before major actions. An entity or several entities traded heavily on the S&P 500 and oil futures minutes before a Truth Social post from Donald Trump sent markets swinging earlier this month. So if you think they're not doing it, might as well think again. In the space of 1 minute, more than $800 million in trades was made on oil futures. And whoever made those trades made an incredible amount of money. Anyway, it goes on. There's some more information here. That's on a site called 9 News. I think that's out of Australia. We were talking about the cloned bodies earlier. This is more on that. A startup has been quietly pitching cloned human bodies to transfer your brain into. It's as outrageous as it sounds. So this kind of is just more on what we already talked about earlier. But this has more to do with the scientific aspect of it and how it might work. I will be sure to include this in the Substack post that I put out. We won't go into that anymore tonight, but I thought that was kind of interesting, and I'll put it with the other one as well, the other link. Harbinger's Daily came across this one. Look at this. Rabbi proposes a digital Jewish temple in the Temple Mount. Hadn't thought of that one, did you? It has frequently been called the most volatile 35 acres on the planet. I speak, of course, of that area in Jerusalem we refer to as the Temple Mount. Before we get into the focus of this article, which examines unusual proposals from a Jewish rabbi concerning the new temple, let's take a moment to briefly examine the history of this sacred area. So they're, of course, going to talk about how that's where the other temples were and all this stuff, which, of course, as we know, it's not true. It was actually just down the hill a little ways from there, and this is the remains of the Roman Fort Antonia. So, as we have talked about ad nauseum on this show, let's see where it goes into the. Yeah, here we go. Digital Temple. On March 19th this year, the Times of Israel published an article by Rabbi Mahler. Although the article cited many of the promises which will be fulfilled in the millennial kingdom, Rabbi Mahler applies them to the current dispensation. For example, the article opens the following paragraph. Although it might seem impossible now, I do believe that within a decade or two, Muslims will visit Jerusalem and pray together with Jews. As Prophet Zechariah predicts, then everyone who survives from all the nations that came against Jerusalem shall go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, which is Jesus, of course, and to celebrate the Feast of Booths, Zechariah 14:16. That does make sense to me. I'm just sidebar here. That does kind of make sense that would be happening in the millennial reign of Jesus Christ, but that is not what this rabbi is talking about here. However, that passage applies to the millennial kingdom age because in reference to worshiping the King, which we now know is the King of Kings and Lord of Hosts, Jesus Christ, who will rule and reign when he inaugurates the kingdom of his second advent. Yeah, okay, that's basically what I just said. The author then goes on to adopt another millennial kingdom passage in the form of Isaiah 2:3, which reads, "Many people shall come and say, 'Come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, and we shall walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Which house are the nations drawn to? It is the millennial temple, the fourth temple. This says, since the rabbi does not currently believe that in a millennial kingdom age as we do, meaning Christians, he focuses on the present age and advocates leaving the Muslim worship buildings in place and relying on a digital version of the temple. I'm looking to see how that might work. He writes, there's open space in the Temple Mount where a 3D digital broadcast Jewish house of worship could be rebuilt as a virtual replica like those made in the Factum Foundation, a Madrid-based nonprofit that creates high-resolution digital replicas of the world's cultural heritage. Could be built about 600 feet north of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, next to the Dome of the Rock, provided Muslims would cooperate. This would fulfill Prophet Isaiah's statement that in the early part of the Messianic age, Torah will be broadcast from Zion and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, Isaiah 2:3. This isn't the first time Rabbi Mahler had suggested this course of action. In 2022, he claimed that Israel should move ahead and build a virtual reality inner sanctuary on the Temple Mount next to the Dome of the Rock. So I don't know that this could work, but I think that's kind of interesting. I never heard anyone else talk about this. It says, while most, including myself, believe that there will be a literal third temple, the proposal for a largely digital temple, which only requires a small building from which to broadcast from, adds an interesting dimension to the conversation. Yeah, which is why I wanted to bring this up. However God chooses to bring this about, the fact that we are continuing to have this conversation proves the truth of the scriptures when it speaks about a third, albeit short-lived, temple. Yeah, Harbinger's Daily. Digital temple. I don't know. I don't really see that happening, and keep in mind the temple, the fund, the people that have collected the money over the years. The Temple Institute is what they're called. They've been working on this for a long time, and I don't think that they're going to settle for a digital version. I think they're only going to want a physical version. But I do think it's an interesting way of looking at things, for sure. So we shall see. I don't think we're all that far from that. Trump dragging Americans into hell. Iranian parliament speaker says. Mohammed has dismissed the U.S. president's threat to bomb civilian infrastructure unless the strait is fully reopened. Yeah. Of course, he did do that recently, saying, he's going to basically wipe out an entire civilization. Because that's what Trump does. He makes empty threats. In an expletive-laden post on Truth Social on Sunday, Trump warned that Iran would be living in hell unless the vital waterway is reopened to shipping by Tuesday, which of course it wasn't. He also repeated his threat to bomb Iranian power plants and bridges. Responding on X, this guy, Mohammed, urged Trump to end what he described as a dangerous game. Your reckless moves are dragging the United States into a living hell for every single family, and our whole region is going to burn because you insist on following Netanyahu's commands, he wrote. Wow. He sounds like an anti-Semite. I don't know. Make no mistake, you won't gain anything through war crimes, the Iranian official added. And then it says, Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz to enemy ships shortly after the U.S. and Israel initiated their air campaign on February 28th. So anyway, yeah. Interesting that he is calling Trump out. I think that's good news. All it's going to do, though, is obviously probably make him madder. When I found this article on that Substack post earlier today when I was looking, and we covered it talking about Anthropic's mythos, this is actually a Singularity Hub article about that. Anthropic's Mythos AI uncovered serious security holes in every major operating system and browser. So yeah, talking cybersecurity here. So we won't go into that again, but there is further information, quite a bit here on this post on Singularity Hub. So they have it as well. I think that's good because they reach a lot of people. Natural news. Melania denies Epstein ties, calls for survivor testimony amid political firestorm. Melania publicly rejected rumors linking her to Epstein, calling them mean-spirited lies. She admitted to only a single 2002 email exchange with Ghislaine Maxwell, a polite reply to an article, but denied any deeper association. She also refuted claims that Epstein introduced her to Donald. In an unexpected move, Melania urged Congress to hold press hearings where Epstein survivors could testify under oath. However, survivors and advocates questioned the sincerity, noting many have already testified, while key documents remain hidden. While some Democrats supported her call for hearings, Epstein survivors and their lawyers criticized it as a deflection. The statement thrust Melania into the Epstein scandal's ongoing fallout, which has implicated high-profile figures like Bill Clinton and Bill Gates. Donald Trump's past comments praising Epstein as a terrific guy, quote-unquote, have also resurfaced, complicating the narrative. Melania's remarks marked a rare public stance on the typically private First Lady. Whether her push for hearings leads to action or is seen as political maneuvering remains uncertain as the Epstein case continues to expose divisions over justice and accountability. First Lady Melania forcefully denied any association with Epstein. And again, Trump did not know that she was going to do that. So it tells me there's a rift there. And in fact, it's been pretty widely known that she doesn't live wherever he is most of the time. She's not there. So they're already separated in a way. So will that lead to a divorce? I don't know. There's no way to know. But I don't think that the old Donald liked that too much. Strait of Hormuz transit remains limited to Iran-aligned vessels. Tankers gather near entrance. So this is the... going back to what we started tonight. Breaking enemy blockade by blockading their blockade. That is Don Zhu. Yeah. Ceasefire fails to ease transit restrictions. Movement of friendly vessels and growing armada of waiting tankers. So yeah, we'll see where this goes. Situation at the Strait remains a tense stalemate. The U.S.-Iran ceasefire has not, in its initial days, fulfilled the stated condition of reopening the vital waterway. Yeah, they basically said no can do. They're not going to do it. Transit is functionally limited to a narrow Iran-controlled corridor used by a select group of vessels. So it will be interesting to see what the old Donald does here on preventing the blockade from being blocked. I don't know how he's going to force that. Whatever the case may be, it's probably going to result in lost lives, unfortunately. And then this is one more on Spain. Netanyahu slams Spanish PM as Sanchez calls for action against Israel for criminal acts. Israel has removed Spain from a U.S.-led, civil military-led coordination center in Kiryat Gat, accusing Spain of hostility in supporting terrorist regimes because they disagree with the war in Iran. Yeah. But we just saw the effigy of old Bibi here being burned or blown up or whatever they did to it. So anyway, further degradation in the relationship between Spain and Israel. Pretty interesting. Kind of tells me, though, that Spain isn't working for Bibi Netanyahu, unlike most of the countries of the world. Now, they do have their other problems, for sure. They're importing migrants in by the millions, but it is interesting, though, that they're standing up to Israel. Is that your culture? I don't like it. Singer Sabrina Carpenter mocks Arabic celebration call as yodeling during her Coachella performance. Yeah, I saw it. It was pretty funny, actually. Pop star Sabrina Carpenter sparked outrage following a moment during her Coachella performance where she confused an Islamic celebratory call with yodeling, telling the crowd she was not a fan of the shrill ululation. Here's a clip here. I won't bother playing it because I don't have it patched in, but yeah, she's playing and she hears this noise. She thinks it's yodeling. That's what's funny. I don't like it, she adds. prompting laughter among the audience. "It's my culture," the woman said. They could be yelling, telling Carpenter, "That's your culture? It's yodeling?" Carpenter replied, with the woman attempting to explain that it was a celebratory call. And then Carpenter said, "Is this Burning Man? This is weird." Clearly confused. So yeah, and then she had to come out and grovel on X. Here's her groveling note. "My apologies. I didn't see this person with my eyes and couldn't hear clearly. My reaction was pure confusion, sarcasm, and not ill-intended. Could have handled it better." Note, she left out the I. She didn't say I could have handled it better. She said could have handled it better. Now I know what a Zagruta is. I welcome all cheers and yodels from here on out. So don't you know, as soon as she goes and performs anywhere else, she's going to get the yodeling sounds, like nonstop. The Islamic, whatever it is, celebratory call. Good grief. Yeah, anyway. She's a pretty well-known pop star these days. So in case you had no idea who she was. But yeah, she was playing at Coachella. Pretty wild. Now, this is a good story. This is a Not To Be article. An employee finds $9,333. Of course, it's 33. $9,333 in a Chick-fil-A bathroom and gives it back because that is what Jesus would do. How about that? On Good Friday, a Chick-fil-A employee named Jaden Cintron from Kinston, North Carolina, was tested. Let's see how he did. Chick-fil-A worker finds almost $10,000 in a restaurant bathroom and returns it to its owner because that's what God would have wanted. Hero. 18-year-old Jaden Cintron was working Good Friday morning at a Chick-fil-A in North Carolina and found $9,333 in cash left behind in the bathroom. Jaden could have pocketed $9,333 and not told a soul, but he knew what Jesus would do and what God would want, so he turned the money in. Yes, Jaden was on break in the restroom when he spotted something unexpected, 2 white envelopes near the toilet, each from different banks. Inside was almost 10 grand. I bet it was drug money. I'm just guessing. I don't know. My first thought was just like, okay, no, this isn't happening. Something is wrong. And when asked why he didn't take the money for himself, he answered, that's not what Jesus would have done. That's not what God would have wanted. So good for him. But unfortunately, I would imagine he probably is contributing to a drug interaction in some sort, a drug payoff. Textbook answer from a kid who works at Chick-fil-A, and I couldn't be prouder of this kid. Let's see what it says here. The rifle owner later retrieved the envelopes and offered him a $500 reward for his honesty. The teen initially refused, saying he didn't expect anything in return for doing what he believed was right. After multiple attempts by the owner to insist, then he eventually accepted. So he did take $500. So anyway, that was his reward for doing the right thing. So anyway, I thought it was a good story, especially that it happened on Resurrection Weekend. Pretty wild. A couple of vaccine impact articles. This one says even the worst sinner, including satanic Jews, oh boy, that sounds anti-Semitic, can be forgiven through Jesus Christ. I have found throughout my life that there are very many Christians who carry around guilt because they cannot attain to the high standards of morality and religious life that is taught in all the various versions of the Christian cult. So many people believe, I think that he's just talking about the different evangelical sects that are out there. So many people believe that they have committed horrible sins that God could never forgive because they have been deceived by the teachings of Christianity rather than reading the Bible for themselves and understanding what true forgiveness is and that no sin is too great for God to forgive. But for those who put their faith in Jesus Christ and the gospel message. If one reads the Bible, however, they can clearly see that even the worst sinners can find forgiveness through the gospel of Jesus Christ. Paul, who is the author of many letters in the New Testament, was a former satanic Jew who participated in the murder and arrest of other Jews who had put their faith in Jesus Christ as the Jewish Messiah. In his first letter to his young disciple, Timothy, wrote this: I thank Christ Jesus our Lord, who has given me strength. He has considered me faithful, appointing me to his service. Even though I was once a blasphemer and a persecuted and violent man, I was shown mercy because I acted in ignorance and unbelief. The grace of our Lord was poured out on me abundantly, along with the faith and love that are in Christ Jesus. Here is a trustworthy saying that deserves full acceptance. Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am the worst. But for that very reason I was shown mercy, so that in me, the worst of sinners, Christ Jesus might display his unlimited patience as an example for those who would believe on him and receive eternal life. That's from 1 Timothy 1:12-16. Wow. So anyway, if you're looking for forgiveness, this might be the article for you. This is a vaccine impact article. Interesting that they singled out satanic Jews, of which I think there probably are still some, wouldn't you? Satanic, all kinds of people, not just Jews. All right, and then one more from Vaccine Impact. The petrodollar is officially collapsing as the Strait of Hormuz remains closed to U.S. and Israel in spite of the alleged ceasefire. Which, we already know this, but I'm looking to see if there's any new information here. Talking about the 2-week ceasefire, which turned out to be a 2-minute ceasefire, because Israel started bombing Lebanon right away. I mean, instantly, pretty much. All right, and then GeoWatch for this week. Nanopolymer weather warfare. How about that for a title? Nanopolymer weather warfare. RFK Jr., EPA chief, declare war on microplastics amid growing evidence of health risks. Here's the real truth. RFK Jr. and the EPA chief, Lee Zeldin, are pretending to address the microplastic pollution problem while categorically hiding and denying what is by far the most dangerous factor in this equation: climate engineering, nanopolymer fallout. Weather warfare is raging across the U.S. and the world. Extreme weather whiplash is now the norm. The U.S. just had its warmest March ever by a historic margin. Heat wipes out western snowpack, raising fears of drought and wildfire. That's another headline. It's incredibly bad. No end in sight to Colorado River water crisis. That's another headline. There's no place to hide. Latest installment of Global Alert News is right here. Also available on his Rumble and BitChute if you'd rather watch there instead of YouTube, but it's an audio-only program. Also available on select radio stations, radio channels, terrestrial radio stations across the U.S. So, yes, that is Mr. Dane's post for this week. Let's take a look at the scheduled weather and see what that looks like. See what they have planned for us. All right. This is dated April 18th through 22nd. So, coming up. And then we don't really have the split. Normally have the split down the middle, but the only below areas are in the extreme northern part of the U.S. The edges up here of Montana and North Dakota and Minnesota. So that's the only cold areas. Well, Alaska is too, I guess. Everywhere else is pretty much going to be above normal or near normal. So that's kind of what to expect April 18th to the 22nd. Based on that, let's look at Climate Reanalyzer, which is another site that I usually bring into the live stream here. So based on that last map, that's going to be this one. So 7 to 10 days out, around the 18th of April, going to look like this. Mostly warm in the east, a little cooler in the other areas from about the Mississippi out west. But for the most part, not too crazy and radical when you get to April 18th. Let's look at 1 to 3 days. So this is from now for the next 3 days. So temperatures are above normal even over 20 degrees higher than normal in certain areas, even in the Dakotas and Nebraska and stuff. 20 degrees above normal. 11 where I am. So, yeah, and then that's basically now through the next 3 days. And then days 4 to 6 would be April 15th. It's going to be even warmer. So we're going to have quite the warm-up here. Yeah, 19 to 22, 25 degrees above normal. 25 degrees above normal in Massachusetts. Dated around April 15th. Tax day. So, anyway, yeah, that's coming up. So it's going to be pretty darn warm in the next 10 days or so, and then it will cool off a little bit. Got a chemical ice nucleation cool down coming, at least for certain parts of the U.S. And based on the, let's see here. Based on this map, it's mostly going to be Alaska and the extreme northern part of the U.S. Jerusalem reopens after war with Iran. Christians gather, Muslims pray, Jews face limits at Western Wall. Christian worshipers take part in the Holy Fire ceremony at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem's Old City during the Easter holiday, April 19th. So I thought they were closing all that, was one thing that we read at some point. So it says after 40 days of wartime closure, the gates of the old city of Jerusalem reopened. And with them came the return of mass religious gatherings, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish. Yet the renewed activity also underscored a stark reality. While access has been restored, the scale and spirit of worship remained far from normal, particularly for Jews during the recent Passover festival. The contrast was most visible on Saturday as roughly 10,000 Christian worshipers filled the streets around the Church of the Holy Sepulchre for the annual Holy Fire ceremony, a ritual dating back more than 1,200 years. That is pretty incredible. I didn't really know too much about that until I think it was within the last less than a year. I worked on a film, mixing the audio and doing a final mastering production run on the audio for a film called Holy Fire, and it was an L.A. Marzulli film. Let me look and see if let me just pull that up. Let me see if that film's on his site. It probably is. Let's see. Where would it be? Right there. Holy Shroud, Holy Fire. So yeah, it's in part about the, the Shroud of Turin. But the Holy Fire part I thought was really interesting just because I didn't know much about that. But you can stream this, buy and stream this on LA's site. Explores a centuries-old Easter miracle in Jerusalem known as the Holy Fire and a modern scientific test that may finally reveal how the image was formed. Oh, that's about the Holy Shroud. Featuring a stunning experiment by Dr. Fanti, this film draws a compelling link between the shroud and the miraculous fire that scorched but did not burn the linen of the Shroud of Turin. See, I think the Shroud of Turin personally was a chemical situation, not what he's talking about, but that's just my opinion based on some of the stuff that I've looked at in the past. But yeah, these are some of his, books and films and stuff. Several of these things I have worked on for Mr. Marzulli. So yeah, these are available to stream or watch or whatever. lamarzulli.net. But yeah, that Holy Fire thing is really, really interesting. So that's what we're looking at here on this. I didn't realize it went back that far. 1,200 years. At the same time, the twice yearly Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing traditionally delivered in Mass at the Western Wall during Passover, was severely curtailed under security restrictions with attendance capped, and the usual massive crowds were absent. During the height of the war, Jerusalem itself was not spared. Iranian ballistic missiles were fired toward the city with intercepts taking place directly over the old city of Jerusalem. Shrapnel and missile debris fell in multiple locations. We reported on that, remember? Including near the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound on the Temple Mount and in the Jewish Quarter. Yeah, so it remains to be seen as to what will happen with that. Are they going to purposely blow something up in that area so that they can rebuild their temple, or what? Because really nothing would surprise me at this point. Anyway, and then I thought I'd mention this one too. We're seeing lots of reports on strange things in the sky these days, whether it's meteors or orbs or drones or whatever it might be. I thought I would look at Yowza.com and just see if Marshall had any new articles on that, and in fact he does. An article from about a week ago. According to NASA, the March 17th Ohio bolide created a blast wave that may have also shaken houses north of Medina, and reports described rattled buildings and homes, but the event was an airburst with meteorites falling in the Medina County area, which I guess is in Ohio. This was a serious event, and in our article, Planet X and the Plan to Save Humanity, we stated that the 2026 Ohio bolide is the largest well-documented space rock to fall over the United States since 2013. So I don't know if you guys heard about that, but thought that was kind of interesting. Even greater concern was that it was followed by a large and highly irregular pattern of smaller bolides across the country, making March 2026 a month to remember. No wonder this pattern of large rocks falling from the sky is a media event, because what our data shows is that we now can call the statistical hockey stick from hell. When you see it, you'll know why. However, what is the greater concern is that the entire first quarter of 2026 has set new records across all our Fireball data sets. And the question now is, was this the beginning of a new, more ominous trend or a one-off? The concern is that we are entering a new phase and that many more large bolides will light up our skies in the months ahead. So what he's saying here is that some of these fireballs that we're seeing, some of the increases in fireballs, you can see, looking at the orange line here, here's March, you can see is shot way up here, is that the Earth is passing through some of this, tail aspect of the Planet X system as the Planet X system moves through our system. And that there might very well likely be a increase in some of these meteors and fireballs and stuff. So I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know if he's got any interviews here or not. It looks like this is mostly just an article talking about volcanoes, which there was a volcanic eruption today in Japan. I didn't see too much about that. Let me look for that real quick just before we go. I heard about it. Sakurajima. So let's see here. Here's volcano discovery. Sakurajima volcano, powerful eruption. Explosive eruption at the volcano continues. A vigorous volcanion-sized eruption generates a copious ash plume rising to an altitude of 11,200 feet. Yeah. So anyway, that is something that just happened, I guess, today. Watch video, Japan volcano erupts. Sakurajima eruption sends massive ash plume. Let's see if that will play. So there you can see it. A significant volcanic eruption occurred today at Sakurajima volcano in Kagoshima Prefecture in Japan. So that's a pretty big one. Anyway, it says travel chaos, flights grounded, roads shut. So yeah, I don't think that volcano is typically erupting. So this is kind of a new one on the map, as it were. So yeah. So all that to say, the planet is heating up. Things are happening, and some of these meteors incoming, whatever they are, some of these objects could be attributed possibly to the whole Planet X system moving closer and closer to where we are. So anyway, I think that is all of the news and reports. I do have a couple of X posts I was going to just mention. This is one I just reposted. It's really simple, but I just thought it's kind of profound in a way. This gives you a little glimpse, and I don't really know how old this footage is. Somebody can post something like this, and it could be from a long time ago, and we just don't know, but it looks pretty recent based on how he looks now. But this is Trump. It says Donald Trump is getting mocked after a video shows him walking away without even closing his own umbrella before boarding a plane. So he's getting on the plane here. And so he's getting on board, and obviously it's raining, and he just leaves the umbrella right there and walks in. He doesn't even fold it down. He just lets it dangle and blow around a little bit. It says Trump's getting mocked after video shows him walking away without even closing his own umbrella before boarding a plane. This is a man who's had everything handed to him in his entire life, never worked a real job, pure entitlement. I don't think they're wrong. Now, this guy just kind of steps around it. It's not his job either, apparently. But the next guy does grab the umbrella and fold it up. So how hard is it to do that and take the umbrella in? Trump can't even do that by himself. Anyway, I don't know. It's kind of profound, I think. I was looking to see if there was anything else on X. I guess I didn't really retweet too much this week, but the show from last week with Russ Tanner is on here. If you guys happen to be on X, you can watch it there. If you happen to have missed it, it is embedded there, and also the video itself is there. So anyway, that is that, and then point you guys to Linktree. I did have to do an update on Linktree earlier today. This is, let me post that URL here so you guys can follow along at home if you guys want to. Well, it's Linktree/The Diamond Report is where it is. I'll get this to work here in a second. But anyway, yeah, it is Linktree/The Diamond Report. And what it is simply the links to all of the various platforms and things that I use for the Diamond Report. Now, it's social media, is video platforms, and the support type platforms like Substack and Subscribestar and stuff like that. So it's links to everything. I did have to update it earlier today because I found out that DLive is going out of business. DLive is been around for quite a while, quite a few years. I've used it going back quite a few years as a live stream platform that doesn't censor. Way back when we were doing broadcasts for Lost Arts Radio, we used DLive, and in fact had been using DLive even the most recent broadcast with Dr. Cousins that I do each week. So we're going to have to drop DLive because, and it's very similar to Twitch. It's mostly gamers, but they don't censor what you're saying. Never had a single issue with DLive ever, but unfortunately, they ran out of money apparently because they're going out of business. So we've had to remove that link from the list here. So there isn't I've got one backup platform here now to live stream to if something happens with Facebook and YouTube and so forth. So we can live stream to like Telegram. That's my other backup at this point. But just note that if you were following DLive at all, that is now basically gone. The site's still working at the moment, but it's going to be shutting down very soon. I didn't really see a timeline on when they're going to shut it down. But that's not good to see small companies like that go out of business. They're very similar to Twitch, although at much smaller scale, I think. And Twitch is owned by one of the other big companies. I forget who. Maybe Microsoft or somebody like that. So anyway, there's all the other links. That is on my Linktree. And I never could get my other screen to come up here, so let me try it this way. Yeah, and then here it is. The Substack, diamonddisc.substack.com. That's also the well, the URL in the upper left corner up there is a link to the link tree, which is this Linktree/the Diamond Report. That gives you the page that we're looking at there with the purple, and that is all of the links for the Diamond Report. And then you can also get there by simply going to the diamond.report. So any of those things should work and take you there if you're interested in more about, what I'm doing and where I'm posting things. And then, of course, Substack and Subscribestar are good ways to support the show if you guys are interested in doing that. And I would say, I wanted to update one more thing here on the date for the store closing, the Diamond Report store. I'm going to shut it down because I don't feel like it's really paying for itself anymore. It did right at first. It did pretty well, and you guys bought products, but it seemed like it's kind of gone cold and nobody's buying anything from there. So I don't want to continue spending money that people are donating for the show. And there are just a handful of people that are supporting the show. I think there's 7 total people paying a little bit on Substack, and there's another 4 more people on Subscribestar. So there's a total of 11 people that are supporting monetarily what this show is doing. So thank you guys very much, and you know who you are. And I don't think it's a good use of those funds, though, to continue with the store. So that thing does renew at the end of next week. So I'm going to cancel it at some point before that. So we'll have one more show before that all folds up. But just know that the store, I can show it to you here. Yeah. And then, so this is the store that will be closing probably at some point next week. It will still be up a week from now for sure, because I think the bill comes due near the end of next week, and I want to shut it off about a day or two before that so they don't charge me the several $100s it costs annually to keep this store open. And it's a good store. I put a lot of work into it, and I hate to lose it. And unfortunately, they delete literally everything. So if you guys want any one-of-a-kind final merch before it's completely gone, this will be your last week to 10 days to get it, because it's going to close down probably somewhere around the 22nd, 23rd, somewhere in there. So there are, my music company logo on some different things, and then there's End Times dates and Diamond Report, the old Diamond Report logo, Diamond Report Live logo, and then also the Conspiracy Analyst shirts and hats people seem to like, and T-shirts and mugs and stickers and I don't know, all kinds of stuff here. So anyway, just know that is all closing down in the next 10 days or so. So I just wanted to mention that, give you a heads up. I've said for quite some time that it was going to shut down in April, but I didn't have the date until real recently. So that's what that is. I'll be sad to see it go, but we can always build another one if we ever need to. And I would probably use the newer logo anyway. So there you go. And then here's the Substack. You just go to diamondist.substack.com and drop your email address in, and then you can sign up to get the email links and things like that sent directly to your inbox. So that will be all the articles that we talked about tonight. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy the show, and we will pack it in for tonight. We've got the next show, which will be a week from now, which will be the 19th, April 19th, starting at 9 p.m. Central Time, and we will look at that. Look at all the new stuff then. And before we go, let me just double check and make sure I didn't miss any important information here on the chat. Quite a few comments here back and forth. Oh yeah, there's some people talking about mentioning Hal Turner. Yeah, I will put that video out as soon as possible. I want to explain what happened with Hal, because I do think it's a bit of a red flag, unfortunately. Coming from a Christian perspective, he does claim to be a Christian, and he has not treated one of his subscribers, namely me, in a very Christian manner. And I want to, and I've tried to contact him and connect with him on an individual basis directly to him. I've tried that first. That did not work. He completely ignored me multiple times. So now it's time to go public with what happened. So I'll just kind of leave that hanging, and I don't want to hurt the guy. I'm not out for anything other than to put the word out that what happened is simply not right. And I will explain everything that happened, again, in a separate video. And it's really sad, because I don't really want to ignore what he's doing from a news standpoint, but I can't as a believer, I can't continue to support what he's doing. And you guys have known every week, month in, month out, year in, year out, I have pretty much always reported on stuff that he has reported on and given him full and complete credit for it, and recommended people go subscribe and go listen to his show. You guys know that. I'm on record having done that literally every week for the last several years. And that's all over, unfortunately. So anyway, I don't see any other comments that are really grabbing my attention, but Miss Betty says, good night, folks. Another great program. Much love. Be well. Be safe. Until next time. Thank you, Miss Betty. Yeah. Susan says, I need some new shirts. I'm a conspiracy analyst. So it's a must-have. Well, thank you so much, Susan. And yeah, they are still available. You can order at any point in the next 10 days, I would say. Something like that. Oh, my good friend Raven is here. Hello. Yep. And he's really great at making all things come together for our good. Jesus is. Yes, he sure is. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, guys. Blessings to you all. I hope you have a wonderful week this week. And even though it's tax week, you can be looking up, because once we're past tax day, that's always a good thing. See, I'm self-employed, so it's kind of hard-hitting, and you other self-employed people out there know exactly what I'm talking about, because unfortunately, you have to cut a check to the IRS every single time it comes around. Me, what I do personally is I file an extension. I do it later, and that isn't necessarily the best way to do it, but that's the way that I've found seems to work okay for what I'm doing. So anyway, I'll be working through all that stuff this week. So blessings to you guys, and again, we'll do it again next week, and look forward to seeing you guys then. And we'll play one more video on the way out, and then we will close it all up. So love you all. Talk to you again real soon.
This is the first time we're going to send humans to the moon, and we're going to have humans in low Earth orbit. That is awesome.
I was talking to someone very close to Elon Musk, and this is in the first Trump administration. And they said, no, they're really going to launch the Mars mission from the dark side of the moon. So it can't be looked at by a lot of our enemies, but also it's a better launch point. And also it's protecting the craft facilities from solar radiation. And they've already got 3D printers up there. They've already got a base up there with a secret space program. And that when Trump wins re-election, they're going to announce it and do it. You notice Musk suddenly said, now we're not launching from the Earth, we're launching from the dark side of the moon. A month ago.
Exactly. Well, that's 6-7 years ahead. That's the kind of intel. This is part of the problem, which is we're getting the intel much, much later. And there's this gap in time. So we talk about things like the release of the UFO file. This is scheduled.
8 brilliant minds, each one inching closer to unlocking zero-point energy, plasma fusion that could render fossil fuels obsolete, or the anti-gravity secrets allegedly reverse-engineered from crashed non-human craft, have met mysterious ends or vanished without a trace. Their deaths and disappearances clustering in recent months amid rising whispers of massive revelations.
I've been 100% serious. I've been briefed by just about every alphabet agency there is. And I'll just tell you this, if they would release the things that I've seen, you would stay up, you'd be up at night worrying about or thinking about this stuff. This country would have come unglued, I think, if they would have heard all that I heard. They would demand answers. And we need to. But, you know, it's never going to get, unfortunately, it just keeps getting covered up, and the people that know are dying or disappearing, as the case may be.
Wow.
And for the record, I'm not suicidal, and I don't take risks.
This is why Congress is working hard for whistleblower protections, because we want people to feel safe to come out and have a conversation. And right now they don't feel overly safe. They've seen some of the tactics and techniques that were applied to try to keep people quiet in the past. Let me say this in general terms. People say, oh, well, the government would never kill anybody to protect a secret. Try going to Area 51 and look at the signs on that chain link fence where it says lethal force authorized. You cross that fence and they can kill you dead. Okay? So the government can, under certain extreme cases, under certain extreme situations and conditions, they can do whatever they need to do to protect national security, and they will.
But I was standing behind an alien in a spacecraft, Just a small one. Could I ask you a question? And he said, okay. And I said, how do you get from here to Alpha Centauri? We can't do that. The only thing that we think about is I have to go really fast for a really long time. Can you use what information I have in my head and try to explain it to me? And he said, well, do you know what a Rubik's Cube is? And I said, oh yeah, my son can do them in 2 minutes. He says, okay, so imagine a Rubik's Cube, but not necessarily just the 6 sides. Just imagine the concept of a Rubik's Cube. And I said, okay. Now imagine on each one of the tiles on the Rubik's Cube has a chart of the elements. And he says, so what you do to get to Alpha Centauri is you just twist the cube. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I told you you wouldn't understand. And he said, when the periodic table occurs in a different place, you're at that place. And that's just a very crude explanation. But you have to stop thinking about go that way for a long time, very fast.
Describe the very first time you were teleported.
It was scary in a way. I mean, you don't really know, okay, is this evil? Is this good? What is this? What do I do with this? How do I deal with it? I was on the phone. Oh my God, what's happening? And I was landed, and landed about 40 miles away in a ditch outside of a Baptist church in a little tiny town just where you cross over the border. And it was an incredibly frightening moment.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
So what Grush has told me, this is what blew my mind, and what he said that happened with Trump. He said that the Nordic people or the Nordic aliens are like a few hundred years more advanced than we are. But the Nordic people somewhat resemble humans, and they have been experimenting with crossbreeding with humans. And he says some of them that there are aliens that are crossbreeds living in the world.
I mean, I had someone come and brief me who was in a military uniform, worked for the United States Army, that was briefing me on the locations of hybrid breeding programs where captured aliens were breeding with humans to create some hybrid race that could engage in intergalactic communication. An actual uniformed member of the United States Army briefed me on that.
The fallen include MIT plasma physicist Nuno Loureiro, gunned down while on the cusp of limitless clean fusion power. Caltech astrophysicist Carl Grillmer, shot dead on his front porch after work, hinting at exoplanet life detection that overlapped with UAP sensor tech. Novartis chemical biologist Jason Thomas, found dead near a lake with DoD contracts. Retired Air Force Major General William Neal McCasland, a Podesta emailed UFO insider with knowledge of crash retrievals and directed energy systems, who vanished on a New Mexico hike.
My name is Susan Wilkerson. My husband is missing. Okay. And it's been about 3 hours, and I have some indication that he must have planned not to be found. He's left his phone. He changed his clothes into I don't know what. I think he's on foot. All of our cars and bicycles are in the garage.
General McCasland's disappearance, what do you make of it?
Well, it's suspect, of course. I know a lot of folks are pointing at the UFO things because him being at Wright-Patterson over some top secret stuff is involved in some of the nuclear stuff too. I know his wife said he didn't have anything to do with any UFO research, but generally those folks don't talk about it when they do that. at a pretty high level of security.
Melissa Casillas, who was believed to have security clearance for sensitive information at Los Alamos, vanished without a trace. Monica Reza and another unnamed associate who disappeared under eerily similar circumstances. NASA scientist Frank Maywald. The cause of death has never been made public, and officials confirmed that an autopsy was never performed. Maywald had been a prominent researcher at the space agency's Jet Propulsion Laboratory since 1999 and worked on multiple projects tied to advanced satellite technology that could scan Earth and other planets. And Anthony Chavez, a former employee at Los Alamos until his retirement in 2017, vanished without a trace on May 4th, 2025, just 7 weeks before a key assistant at the same lab disappeared, bringing the total number of unexplained incidents to at least 8 since July 2024. As Congressman Tim Burchett and independent voices raise alarms over this body count, merely ask yourself, who profits from keeping humanity chained to oil barons and petroleum pipelines while the stars beckon with free energy from the vacuum itself? The pattern is too precise, the timing is too convenient, and the stakes, the deep state doesn't just hide the truth, it makes it disappear. John Bound reporting for InfoWars.